welcome to episode 68, Killer POV. I'm one of your co-hosts, Rob G, from Fearnet and Icons of Fright. With me is Elric Kane, Inside Horror. I did to you what I did to Rebekah last time.
You were waiting until he was doing something.
I saw he was occupied for the first time ever.
Briefly.
He was playing on his phone.
He was doing something on his phone. So I was
actually looking up Inside Horror to find out what it was. It's like, I've never heard of that. Oh, I was in that. Oh, yeah, Sid Haig. Nice.
You requested that, but
yeah,
you requested that I refer to you. No, actually, you don't care.
I don't care. I like that. Jump cut. Yeah.
Jump cut.
Actually, do hope people find it. Like,
you can sound out fancy in Relativity now.
That's right. Well, for at least another few weeks.
For at least another few weeks, you can say Relativity.
I just posted an Inside Horror link to somebody because somebody wrote to us saying you should have so-and-so on, and somebody I can't remember who it was.
Right.
It shows how short my memory is.
Yeah.
The Sid Haig one's really cool. The one me and Bekah did once because of Sid Haig's birthday, I think 2 days ago.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And it's actually really fun. He's a really fun person.
Yeah, he's awesome. And also Rebekah McKendry, Fangoria.
Bruised and battered.
I am so bruised and battered right now because I've been building a house and I am just, my legs are covered. Like this morning I stepped out of, I was coming downstairs to get coffee and Dave looked at me and he was like, "You look like a junkie." Yeah. And I looked down and I really do. I'm just covered in just bruises and track marks. And yeah, I broke a toe. So my foot's all black and yeah, I look pretty bad.
Pretty awesome. You look much more rugged than me and Rob, whose hands are completely clean and have never done a day of work.
Do you guys know what I did today?
In our lives.
I sanded paint off a door, but it was lead paint. So I had to do it I had like a full respirator on and a full like suit. And it had to be like, you have to like.
Do you rent it?
No.
The suit?
No.
Oh, you
it's
just
out in my
suit?
car right now. And
we're
the
gonna
respirator.
Have a break soon. Bekah's coming back.
Woo,
I'm doing
Speaking
the rest of the show with the respirator.
It's a good intro to The Strain, the new TV show, because they all dress in that, I think, as it goes on, because it's all about viruses and stuff.
Did you see it? Did you like it?
I watched the first one, and you know what? I definitely will watch it. And I like the horror side of it, but my gosh, I read a tweet before I watched it and it was dead on. They were like, "What is up with the weird 90s acting?" And I was like, oh my God, it feels exactly like a 90s show.
Really?
They're saying about the acting style, like Highlander. Remember Highlander, the show?
Yeah.
It feels like the acting, or like pre-Fringe, something that existed before Fringe. And it's just really weird. It really threw me because the characters are kind of cheesy, but the actual horror stuff is awesome. And like I see a lot of potential in that show. I will definitely keep watching it just because I'm curious where it's going to go. But it feels also in terms of comparing it to a movie, feels like what is the film with Ethan Hawke, Daybreakers? It feels like it's set almost like it's going towards a world like that, which I liked, and I like Daybreakers. But it's interesting. Definitely, worth watching for fun. But don't go to it thinking it's the next like Hannibal or True Detective. I think it's going to be more of a campy, and the camp's the wrong word, but it looks playful. I don't know. I'd never read the book, so Guillermo and is it? Peter
I know nothing
Atkins?
about it.
Oh, it's that Peter. Is it Peter Atkins?
It's
and
vampires.
Guillermo del Toro wrote Peter Straub, I think. I know they wrote a book together, and it was a novel, and then not Peter Straub. Oh,
I don't know who it is.
Peter,
our board op is shaking his head at you.
He's like,
he
knows.
knows.
He knows.
You are
I wish
so
he could
wrong.
communicate with us. All he can do is shake his head disapprovingly. Did I get it right in any of those Peters?
No.
So it's not a Peter.
It's not a Peter at all.
It's not a Peter. I was sure it was a Peter.
Google it. Google it.
Hans Gruber? No? Still got nothing? Okay.
Wait. He wrote it. It is Chuck
Hogan.
Hogan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you
okay.
were way off.
Thanks, Parker.
I really thought it was. Maybe.
That's the guy that collaborates with Stephen King. What's the matter with you?
Maybe he wrote another book. I think Guillermo did write another book with somebody. But anyway, regardless,
Whatever.
I thought it was fun, but I've only seen the first one. Didn't you see? You got to see a bit.
I got a copy of the first three, but I only watched the first one because it was not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
I was in there for the eye worms. I was like, hey,
cool.
this is kind of cool. But then it just went to kind of like a traditional vampire story, with
but it
eye
feels
worms.
fringy and X-Filesy.
I was comparing it to Quantum Leap.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe that may be what I mean by the acting feels like it's not in the right time period. I don't know what's going on.
That's the part I agree with you because
Yeah.
I mean, Quantum Leap, the plots could not be more similar, but it's just this kind of like weird, like USA 90s feel to it.
Yeah, I bet it'll change. I bet it'll start getting a little. It could also be the presence of what's his name, Sean Astin.
That could be
Yeah,
it.
Sean Astin's in one of the three mains, and so seeing him,
But then we'd feel like Hobbit-esque or something. So, but no,
worth
I
watching.
mean,
worth watching a couple probably, and then see where it goes.
yeah, I'm kind of. I feel the same way about Penny Dreadful, where like some people like absolutely fell in love with it. I was kind of like, I watched the first episode and was like, it's goth kids hanging out. But apparently it got really good after that.
I've heard very good. I watched the first one too, and I was very like, it's pretty cool. But I didn't.
I heard
it gets
a lot better. I haven't seen that yet.
I'm writing down to catch up on that one because that's one I actually like. I was not into it at the opening, but then Ryan Turek was like, I'm in love with this girl and I need to go back and catch up.
Everyone's in love with Alice Eve. She's not Alice Eve, Eva Green.
Yeah.
And Alice Eve.
Are we sure we have the name on that one right? Should I ask Parker?
Yeah. Chuck Hogan.
Parker,
Hogan
you
has a
would
great
come in and co-host the show with me.
Eva Green. Alice Eve. Somebody
the one where we get everything wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
I watched a little bit of American Horror Story Coven.
Oh, yeah.
I've only seen the first season. I skipped the second one because a lot of people were mixed on it. And I'll get to it eventually, but since every season is completely...
Doesn't matter,
I figured I could go wherever. But I had an advanced thing of Coven, and I watched like the first half of the season. And I was a little mixed at first, but there's just so much crazy shit that happens in that show that I had to actually go back and like... Because I didn't remember what it aired on, but like I got to the episode where like there's like it's like Halloween night and there's a bunch of zombies like surrounding the freaking house.
That's a good episode.
And like, the young Farmiga, I forget her name, comes out with a chainsaw and chainsaws a dude like half through his face. And I'm like, wait, what freaking network is this on? Because I can't believe what they're getting away with.
But between that and
That's
Hannibal.
FX.
Yeah, but that and Hannibal, you're like, and Hannibal's not even cable, right?
Yeah, and to be honest,
NBC,
Coven was not nearly as bad as the prior season, which I highly encourage you to go back and revisit the Asylum one.
I'll see it eventually.
Just because I have that one too. It was so batshit. I mean, this one, it was witches, but they pulled out a couple of other genres and mixed it in. But last season, it was like, we're in an asylum, but there's Nazis and there's aliens, and it was just crazy.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe they do too much. I mean, because I like all three seasons in a way. I enjoy all of them. But I think the second one maybe the craziness was so...
It was the weirdest.
Too much, but it kind of worked. And the third one, I felt they were throwing a lot at it, but at a certain point, I feel like maybe they lose focus on what the show is at times, and they go off on a crazy tangent, and you're like, what? Why am I watching?
Because so far, halfway through it, it's like, there's obviously like the Frankenstein guy, right? There's like a guy who, I can't fathom from a writing perspective how they make this show.
Yeah.
Because
Dartboard.
It seems like just... a little bit of everything from every
Well, and the next
thing.
one's called Freak Show, so it's going to be even probably nuttier,
Yeah.
But I love that it's out there. It's one of those shows I really
too.
do enjoy watching. But, I kind of wish it was a little more... Like, the first season kind of had the emotional quality, even though it's got a lot of faults as well. It had an emotional quality because it had a limited number of characters. Yeah. Like, it's about a family, ostensibly. Whereas the others, you don't really know what it keeps going off to different characters.
Well, the first one, it was clearly, like, most of it took place in that house. And so, it was very self-contained. It was very small because everything was in that house.
Right.
And I remember, this is before they kind of revealed that each one of the seasons would be resetting itself. I remembered thinking that there was no way that they could keep going because the only thing they could do at the end would like be blow up the house. Everyone's dead or killing themselves
Well, also back then, spoiler, if you know nothing about this series, this isn't a big spoiler, but back then we didn't know it was a mini series. And I remember watching it and being very shocked at a couple of things that happened because I had no idea it was going to end. I thought it was a TV show.
Right.
So when these things happened, I remember just going, what? How is this going to, what's going to happen?
You can't kill that character.
And then the show ended forever, in a sense.
Yeah.
And so now that we're used to that formula, I think it's a little less interesting. Even say True Detective, like knowing it's over with those characters means it's cool because anything could happen.
Right.
But maybe that formula is weighing out a little bit. Whereas Walking Dead actually keeps going and the same craziness still happens to people.
Right.
So, it's interesting. We're definitely in a total different era of television because people die. We grew up with the TV shows where you watch the same people for 10 years in syndication. Now it's like, nope, somebody's going down.
Taking chances.
That's what killed me with Downton Abbey is I would get hooked on a
Don't tell me anything.
Downton Abbey?
I haven't watched it, but I want to. I hear good things.
Gosh. Well, they haven't brought it back recently, but that's what killed me on it is it was like you'd get attached to somebody and then they just kill them.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's interesting. It's certainly, Game of Thrones is definitely, it keeps you on edge.
I think that The Wire was the one that made the shift on that because that was the first one where I was like, hey, I really like that female gangster. Oh, she's dead.
And
I really like...
And then, unfortunately, True Blood's the opposite. So in Game of Thrones, people go, oh, I love that character, and then they die. And True Blood, you go, oh, another character I don't give a flying. Like, seriously, 2 days ago, they killed one of the main characters. This is the last season. I won't say what happened. Literally one of the main characters. And it was in the weakest way with no build up and just like, boom, they're done. And then everyone keeps going. And my jaw dropped. I was like, it's kind of like, you know, how I felt about the last season of Dexter. I think True Blood's going to do even worse for an exit, I think.
But apparently, well, I watched the first couple episodes of True Blood and it wasn't my thing. It was kind of like a soap opera that happened to have some vampires in it. So I quit watching. But apparently somebody misread on my Facebook page where it says like works at, it says Fangoria. Apparently somebody thought it said Fantasia. So I got this fan letter, not from like a fan of mine. It was from a fan of True Blood.
Oh, weird.
And this is maybe a month ago. And this person was like, oh my gosh, I love that you put down that you worked at Fantasia. I'm such a huge fan. And then proceeded to mail me this really, really long diatribe about how great the show is. And all I could send back was like, I'm sorry, I don't watch the show.
What's Fantasia other than a film festival?
Fangtasia.
Fangtasia
is the bar. It's like that the vampires go to in the show.
All right.
Look, hey, I think the first 3 seasons of that show, when Alan Ball, the writer of American Beauty, so a guy of quality, and a gay writer, a very vocal gay writer, and that was a major subtext. And that and AIDS were 2 major subtexts of that show in the first 3 seasons. At a certain point, I didn't know he left the show. I kept watching the show, and I remember just going to Selena going, this show's suddenly so shitty. And I didn't realize 2 more seasons of watching it going, this sucks, and realizing, oh, it's because
he's gone. Yeah,
he's gone. So now there's no subtext.
This first 3 seasons.
Yeah, exactly.
That he was on board for.
And if if Walking Dead ever lost, like, let's say Kirkman and thing, you would suddenly be like, who cares? It's the same thing. Anyway, that's enough about television.
Yeah, that's a lot of television right there.
So what else did you guys watch this week?
Should we talk about Etheria
let's
first?
talk about because we have a guest.
I got one first. I got one first before we jump into Etheria. And it's not even really horror, but it's got serial killer themes, so I'm going with it. Freeway.
Oh, yeah. I was very happy to see you
Freeway.
like that.
So, I had seen this come up on Hulu for free, and I was like, I think I own that, and I own the second one. And I was like, I've never watched it. And so I grabbed him, and I was like, okay, let's watch the first one. And holy fucking crazy. And
I bet Dave would like it, because it's like a great black comedy. I mean, it's like, and Kiefer's just amazing, where he's like in the headpiece and he's all like messed,
drooling and spitting. And
it's a great movie.
It took me a while to realize it was a comedy. At first, I was like, "Is this actually a social commentary on like lower?"
And you've never seen Reese Witherspoon in a role like that. I mean, that's her fully embraced as a redneck.
She kind of gets there in Mud. If you haven't seen Mud, it's kind. I mean, it's definitely not to that extreme, but she definitely kind of embraces the kind of redneckish character.
Oh, you'll like Freeway.
Oh my god! So Reese Witherspoon plays a illiterate daughter of a prostitute who's also addicted to crack or meth or something, and she keeps getting taken away, and her stepfather's been molesting her, and her parents get taken away
in a funny way.
Her parents get taken away to prison, and she gets sent to she's supposed to be like sent to a foster home, but she runs away and starts hitchhiking, and she gets caught up with Kiefer Sutherland, who is actually a serial killer.
Yeah.
And then there's like a whole stuff with the 2 of them, and then she injures him trying to get away from him. She shoots him a whole bunch. And I won't go past that, but that's where it gets crazy.
But it's a black comedy, so all those things that could just be, it's a typical, and it's basically, it's Little Red Riding Hood. The idea is it's like a white trash Little Red Riding Hood.
Because she's trying to get to her grandmother's house, but her grandmother's never met her.
And every word out of her mouth is swear word. Like it's nonstop. Like, yeah. And then the second film has Vincent Gallo as dressed as a woman prostitute the whole movie. And it's called Trick Baby. And it's very weird. The first one's like a great movie. And the second one's just like one of those, wow, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Right. So we're watching this, like the intro, and it's like produced by Oliver Stone. And I was like, what? And then midway through,
I didn't even know who directed it. The guy made, what else did he make?
I don't know. I didn't even look.
Worth looking up.
But I know the soundtrack, because like right as the opening was happening, I was like, man, this opening song's really good. And then music by Danny Elfman comes up on the screen. And I was like, man, this movie actually has some real legitimacy to it.
I mean, it brought Reese on the scene. That was her bursting onto the scene. That was a big, like, people noticed her from that film. And Kiefer, people forget, I think Jack Bauer hurt Kiefer in the sense of just like kind of made him into this one-dimensional thing because of its popularity, but he is really like fun when he's having fun. Like when Kiefer's put in weird roles and gets to do funny things, I think he's great. Like Dark City is hilarious as the weird, like he has master, but when he's playing just a straight hero guy, I find it's quite boring,
It's interesting. It was directed by, what's his name again?
I know he wrote it as well.
Matthew Bright.
Oh, okay. Did he do that Tiptoes thing?
Yeah, it was his debut. He directed Freeway 2.
Yeah.
He did the 2002 Ted Bundy movie.
Oh, weird.
Which is weird. And then the only other thing he did was Tiptoes, which is that really bizarre one.
Gary Oldman.
Where Gary Oldman's like a
midget.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird movie.
Go look up the trailer to Tiptoes on YouTube.
Tiptoes is weird.
Right
but it makes sense that he would have made Freeway.
It's a real movie.
Yeah, you won't. It will look like a joke trailer.
Okay, I haven't seen this. I'm writing it down.
But Freeway, I got to watch Freeway 2 now.
I own it on VHS because it never got released to DVD.
Vince Segal is good in it. Yeah, Trick Baby.
Yeah, I want to see both of those.
I think Rob will really like the first one because of the dark comedy.
It's so bizarre. And at first I was like uncomfortable laughing because it's all about her getting molested and being illiterate. And I'm like, I feel really uncomfortable. In the meantime, Dave's like on the couch cracking up. And finally I was like, okay, Kiefer Sutherland is like drooling and making faces at people. Okay, fine, I'm done. Wow. So, okay, now we will proceed.
No, let's do films then if we're already on films.
No, Etheria was my thing. That was my big.
All right, then I'll throw out my
What you got?
First time ever, Cue the Winged Serpent.
Hell yes!
Oh, wow, that's shocking. It's the first time.
Yeah, I don't know. I never saw it. It's one of those Larry Cohn films that I passed, but I have I had the Blu-ray and I had an afternoon free and I threw it on.
Fun movie.
And
Michael Moriarty is amazing. You don't need a giant dinosaur when you have him kind of like improvising his entire role.
I'm so fascinated by that guy.
He is interesting, yeah.
Because he's like the epitome of like, he's like the go-to New York actor. And obviously he's in a lot of Larry Cohn stuff, but he's just got the accent and the attitude down.
Yeah.
And really believes
he's
like
good.
And
that's a particularly good performance by him. Like
I heard he improvised the entire thing. Like,
I think
Larry.
I think he had the piano player. He was a piano player, so they added that. They threw that into the story.
But then you see
Carradine's fun. There's a lot of crazy stuff in it.
It's just a giant bird that comes and eats people.
Well, not just a bird.
Claymation dinosaur.
A claymation dinosaur bird thing, whatever it is.
Can you say its real name? I can't.
No, I can't.
Queezacuddle. Queezacoxel.
You already failed. But you did better than we did.
Yeah.
But it is fun. I think it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was fun, and it had a fun.
Did you see Chicken Boy?
Yeah, I was looking for.
Yes. Actually, so when the blood head gets taken off.
That's why I watched it, because you talked about it last week, and I was like, what?
So you can now go. I can take you to Chicken Boy in LA now. That exact thing was taken all the way over here, and it's giant.
We're gonna take a photo in front of Chicken Boy.
Yeah, we'll go to Chicken Boy. I think it's maybe
Chicken
Eagle
Boy
Rock.
without me, guys. I want to go to Chicken Boy.
It's in the book of incredibly weird LA things to go see.
Very weird.
And it's just weird. I need to know the story why it came out here, because that makes no sense.
Yeah, let's go in and maybe we can ask somebody that works there.
Yeah, it's got a store.
You know what? Let's use Chicken Boy in our film that we do.
Yeah, I think somebody could make Chicken Boy movies.
Elric and I had good news this week.
Do you?
Bound?
We got a film into Fright Fest.
Well, Darren Bousman is the real reason, because he's such a star.
Because of his acting ability?
Thespian.
Because he's a thespian.
So we have a short playing in Fright Fest. I'm kind of psyched.
And that's a really good festival.
Yeah, it is.
For genre stuff.
Yeah, it's fun.
And it'll play well, too. A big horror crowd, you know?
Yeah, so if you're in London, go see.
Yeah, Jonathan Hughes. We know there's a couple of listeners.
Go to Fright Fest. Check it out.
Go to Fright Fest. Yeah. Our short found is playing.
And the other thing I saw actually ties into yet another thing we spoke about last week. Very briefly, we had talked about an article regarding if people or audiences are getting sick of the supernatural.
That's right.
And I don't know if it was in the article that Ryan wrote or if we were theorizing, but one of the theories was, maybe slashers can make a reemergence. Mm-hmm. And we were saying, well, but what would that be? Like, in the sense that Scream was a slasher that kind of redefined the rules.
Yes, self-referential.
Yeah. And then I thought about it. This week I watched Final Destination 5.
Which one's that?
Which I love.
It's the last one. It's the last one.
I love that one. That one's great.
Which is really great. But before I even get into that, watching it made me realize, and I actually ran up to Jeffrey Reddick, the writer of Final Destination at Etheria, and asked him if this was his intent. That was totally a slasher movie.
Right, just invisible.
That's the thing. It's the same format and structure of a slasher, except everyone went because they were expecting an over the top elaborate death, and that's the thing. I was like, oh wait, that was the new version of a slasher. And I asked Jeffrey, was that what he's like? Yeah, structured like a slasher. Like that's supposed to be a character, but it's not. Slasher, And then we were surprised, like but that didn't. Those are successful and it launched a franchise, but nobody really ripped it off. Like, can you think of other films that kind of like took that format with it.
Well, it's kind of, in the way that they kind of double back on themselves and they all kind of link together, I would say that Saw attempted to do that, but I think that was kind of happening simultaneously. So I don't think it's like a rip-off.
Is Saw, would you consider Saw like does it follow the slasher tropes though?
No, I don't think
it's got
not
a
at all.
character.
No, it's got something. I think it's closer. Yeah, Hostel and Net are doing something different. That's why they were called Torture, but people needed a new name for what it was, I think, which makes sense. I was also thinking about this on the way here, and you just brought up an interesting point about sequels, because I was thinking Purge 2 comes out this week, and I was thinking it's very rare that any of these big franchises work unless there's a continuing storyline.
Yeah.
And Final Destination is one of the few that doesn't really continue it.
Well, no,
there's
a little bit.
That's my argument.
Ones,
For me, so I just watched 5, and 5 is the one that I technically consider 3.
Right. Because it's the one that's really tied.
1 is great because it kind of launched that franchise. 2 I actually like better than 1. I think 2 is really great.
Probably the best film.
And the thing that 2 got right that the other sequels didn't do is that it tied into the mythology and the rules they set up with the first one, but they went backwards. It kind of connected it in a perfect way. The reason I don't like 3 or 4 at all is because essentially all they are is remakes to the original.
Right.
There's nothing.
And that's
to it
exactly
other
what I'm
than
getting at, right?
Accident,
Remaking ideas.
Bunch of people. 5 works, and I don't want to spoil it, but 5 works because it ties itself into 1 and 2 again.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful.
And in a very beautiful way. So I feel like 1, 2, and 5 make a really good trilogy for that franchise.
I love all of them. Like, I debated putting the entire franchise on my top 10 list because they are some of the films that I can watch over and over.
Which one's Ferris Wheel? 3?
That is number 3,
and
I
then
think.
4 is the racetrack. I didn't care for the racetrack one. I didn't hate it. I just didn't care for it. The third one has some really cool stuff. First 2 are awesome. Fifth one's
The reason
amazing.
I didn't like the third one, I've only seen it once in theaters, and I just remember it was the guys that did the first one. Glenn Morgan and James Wong came back to do 3. And I felt like they were too influenced by 2 and then trying to go back to their first thing. Because the thing with 2 that was cool is set up, execution, and it's like, whoa, I didn't see that kill coming. And they did it perfectly in part 5. Rewatching it again, I was like, oh, that's kind of neat. But 3 was like a long, elaborate game of mousetrap. There was this 5-minute setup, and a ball falls over there and does this and that and blah, blah, blah.
Well, that's
and then when you get to the kill, it had nothing to do with
that need to
go
bigger with sequels, which is a problem in
itself.
itself.
But that's where they lost me. I was like, this is just stupid. I don't understand why all this is happening.
Because it was becoming almost not trap-like, like Saw-like, but it was becoming more complicated and more about the elements must be in place for this to happen. It's not just somebody gets hit in the head with a tire anymore. It's all about how, minute of a chance this could be.
But that's like a slasher film, right? It's the build-up,
it's true.
The effect.
But there's again, watching 5 again made me realize this. There's a huge difference between what they do in 3, which is just waste a lot of time to get to the kill and set up all the stuff that has nothing to do with it. Whereas in 5, every little potential thing, the scene that I thought was beautiful was there's the one with the gymnast. Okay. Yeah. And the way they set that up is
everyone was connected to that in that moment to make it happen. Right?
Yes, but every hint they give you. So, all right. So there's a little nail that falls off a thing up top onto the beam. So you're like, all right, that's the way that it could happen. And then the air conditioner thing's not working properly. And you're like, all right, is that going to be it? It's almost like false. It's all a bunch of red herrings. Whereas in 3, it's a bunch of red herrings that really can't do any damage. It just leads to one that has nothing to do with them at all. Whereas in this one, when they work, all their red herrings, all of them are potential killers. Any one of them is going to set it off and actually be like, oh shit, they're all, you know what I mean? And that builds the suspense. Whereas in 3, I'm just like, all right, but...
I'd have to see them. I'd quite like to watch all of them in a row at some point.
We're going to do that episode eventually with all of them.
What was the one that had the 2 girls in the tanning bed? Was that 3?
I can't remember. 3 and 4 are like a blur to me.
I remember
probably
that
4 because it's all about that Daytona Beach kind of style.
I think it's 4.
Okay, I don't remember which one it is, but I remember that one bothered me because they led to their own demise because she knocked over a container of slushy and it was causing the beds to short out and then they couldn't get out or something like that. And I could be wrong, but I remembered when I was watching it thinking, well, so she did that, or however it was like she had made the mistake.
We could talk to somebody that can give us the behind the scenes scoop
I think
on
we
every
know
single one of these
somebody,
movies.
guys.
Yeah, he can tweet at us. But I do think I do think there's something to be said for this idea that basically the most base human thing is just all we need is a little continuity or mystery, right, to keep us going. Because I was thinking about the Saw movies. There's no reason that I should have watched all those movies. And
but
the only thing that kept me back is like, I wonder what happened next in the story, not in the kills. And so if each one was standalone, there's no way I would have watched those movies.
What about like with...
And so I think that's really... And then so my question is, I wonder if The Purge 2, because obviously it's not the story that I was throwing out that time, because that would have been a continuation of a story.
That'll be part 3.
I'm curious how much, or if it's just a continuation of a world, which is a little more dystopian. It's
paranormal.
Different.
I mean, like
that's a continuation of a story, though.
No, it isn't.
No, they end up coming back
on. I know that, but that's like totally tacked on at the end. It's like in the last 5 minutes, they're like, "Oh, she's in the same room," and that's it.
It's definitely far less than the other ones, but there were, and it didn't do well. Is what I mean. That actually kind of proves it. I liked it a lot as a film. It was fun, but it was the least
favorite.
successful.
The 4th one, 5th one,
the 5th one, yeah.
But marked ones.
A big part of that is because 4 was a terrible movie.
Yeah.
And so that's the other thing about franchises. It would be fun to do a show about the films that killed franchise. Each franchise has a film that at some point sucked so bad that even when they try to keep going back to it, they can't.
Yeah.
It's done.
See, because again, I don't remember, but Final Destination 5 was really good. But I know 4, I'm sure it performed fine.
It did well.
But I don't think people liked it as much.
Yeah, no,
that's the thing.
So.
You do one entry.
Critically quite well received.
Yeah. But you do one entry in a franchise that is not well received by fans and audience alike, and then they won't come back to that.
So ironically, it's often the film before the last one that's actually killed the franchise.
Yeah,
and it's not actually the final one. It doesn't matter almost what you do at that point, unless you really reimagine something. So it'd be interesting to look through all the franchises like that and think this way, but I don't know. It's definitely that's funny that you were thinking about that.
This is perhaps our next debate episodes.
Yeah, I'd be curious. So, definitely at some point, I'd like us to look really closely at the sequels and how
franchises.
When do franchises jump the shark?
I mean, a lot of the time it's number 2. They're already doing it
by the second.
It's a lot quicker.
Well, I was like, I was researching a couple of franchises this weekend because I was doing the 80s trivia. By the way, tomorrow night we're doing 80s trivia. 80s horror trivia.
It's in the past.
Yesterday. Thank you. But like, I had no idea there were that many pumpkin heads, and they're making them for Sci-Fi Channel now. Like they've done 2 that are just for Sci-Fi Channel. So yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't know a lot. Yeah, a lot of those sequels you're like, I wouldn't even know anymore.
Yeah. I mean, for a while, just out of loyalty, I'd watch like everything. But now the older I get,
and there's just too much stuff now.
I can't even keep up with Children of the Corns and Cabin Fevers. I don't know where the hell they are. They just keep making them. And Lake Placids, my God.
Oh, that's right. You told me there's a lot of those. See, some of those I just stay off my radar. I'm like, I saw one.
Yeah. No, by the second Lake Placid, I was not there. I was there for the first one.
Yeah, you can't replace Bill Pullman. So Etheria?
Etheria, yeah. We all were at the Etheria film night at the Egyptian Theater.
2 episodes ago, to refresh your memory.
Yes, Axel was here, who directed Soulmate, the one feature-length film that was there, and Heidi as well, who was one of the curators of this thing. And they did 2 blocks, so we got to see the feature film first, and then there was a little bit of a break, and then we got to see a presentation of 7 short films, all helmed by female filmmakers. And
not all horror. They were like a mixture of tones.
Yeah.
Actually, I'd say it was more like other things.
And
like
I don't even know how you would describe them.
There was only maybe 2 that I would say, okay, that's horror.
Yeah, a lot of them touched on dark things.
I'd say no more. I'm looking at the list right now, and I'd argue all of them except for 2. Really? Yeah. I mean, the first one was kind of a Wendigo one. The Dia de los Muertos, definitely.
See, I had no
Job
idea.
Interview, kind of, for sure.
I don't know what was going on in the Wendigo one. I was much more interested in whatever was going outside on the street, not the weird theater with the deer in it. And I mean, I know the Wendigo myth, but that one I was kind of like, it felt like they were either using it to pitch a larger film, but I was far more interested in whatever would have been going on outside.
Yeah, that one was just more. It was a beautiful looking film.
Oh yeah,
and,
they all looked good. I thought the quality was very high.
The quality
overall.
of all the films. Yeah, of the 7, I rather liked them all a lot. There was only one I wasn't too crazy about. And I don't mean to single it out, so I'm sorry if you're listening, filmmaker behind it. I didn't like the Dia de los Muertos one, which was an interesting setup, and it looked
great.
Just from using that, the skull makeup, But I didn't like it because at least all of them at least tried something unique and different, and that was the only one that to me was just From Dusk Till Dawn.
That's what Dave said. Even while we were sitting there, he leaned over and he was like, "This is Dusk Till Dawn." And then at the end, the filmmaker gave 2 quotes from Rodriguez, and Dave was like sitting in the audience smirking at me because of it. And I have to agree. It was very, very Dusk Till Dawn.
It was very well made, and everybody in it was good. And like, again, the makeups looked great and everything like that. It was just, and that's the thing. I liked all of them. Every film was good no matter what I thought of it. That was the only one that I just didn't, because, and we'll get into this, and I kind of wanted to talk about it. I mean, I understand the need for a film festival like this that focuses on female filmmakers specifically. But I tried to watch these films with the mindset of, well, does it matter if it was a woman that directed it or not? Is it a good film? Like, that's what mattered to me. And I think, and that's the thing, I was impressed with it. That's the only one where it felt like, all right, so why did they kill all the dudes? Just because they're guys? You know what I mean?
I think it was, one of them was a rapist, and then the other one looked at her butt or something. It was supposed to be like
the one rapist guy.
I've never been singled out for it.
I get the rapist guy, but what about the woman that ran this brothel, though?
I think it was supposed to be like, it was set up as if she was, like they were part of slavery. Like had them as sex slaves where they were all crying and she was like, you don't leave, you don't show sadness, you get out there. And it was supposed to be set up as if she was, selling them into slavery. But then, you saw them as strippers and you said, oh, they're sex slaves. But then you realized that it wasn't her, being their master and them slaves. She was giving them a pep talk.
Oh, okay.
So that was the setup.
I lost that, but that's fine. But,
I had to explain it to Dave too, so maybe it was just, it was
then let's talk about the ones that we all love.
Well, also just what you just said about women filmmakers, I felt that was less apparent at this festival. That here, like, I can't help but feel like at a couple of the Visceras, a couple of the ones we went to together, that a couple of the films are only in there for that reason, that they didn't feel like strong films. They're just they have to get, enough films to show, blah, blah, blah. I definitely didn't feel that here. I felt like by expanding the genres to whatever they wanted, they're showing really strong, professionally made films. Which
I
is
also
cool.
noticed that they opened it up. It's a lot more international this year. There's only actually one film in there that's from the USA.
Yeah.
And I think that leads to a lot of the strength because of a money thing, to be honest, because Canada, there were two or three Canadian films. There were 2 Australian films.
Right, because they're funded by their governments.
All about film grants.
Yeah. Which is true.
And if the government's giving you $20,000 to make a film, it's going to look and sound a lot nicer than, if it's, your parents giving you $500.
Some of the governments actually have mandates to fund minorities and in the industry. So women are a minority in the industry. If it's native population to their country, they get chance. So that's also might be one of the reasons they're getting better grants over there. It's interesting.
The only one that was actually a U.S. film out of the collection was Rose McGowan's, and I'm sure that she was able to get funding. So,
I mean, maybe, who knows?
Yeah. But that was the biggest thing that I noticed amongst all of them is they were all strong, but they all had a really big budget to back them up. Because when I was talking to some of the girls, they were like, yeah, mine was $20,000, $15,000. You don't see that in a lot of festivals.
Right.
I mean, but we saw it in Screamfest, but again, they were all international.
Yeah, it is. Well, I mean, we obviously don't want to bore you by going too in detail with each one because you can't see them right now, but you will be, they probably will tour to some of them will tour to your town. And I would encourage you to go check out the websites just to see some of the stills because, there's some really cool stuff happening in them.
Yeah. And immediately after the film festival, I tweeted at Stacy, who's one of the other curators for it. What are all the Twitter handles for these filmmakers so I can keep tabs on them because I thought they were all really good.
Right. Yeah, I'd like to see what they do next.
So there's that. I mean,
except for that weird Save the Children video that I was a tad bit confused by, but it's cool. There was a music
video and we were all like sitting there that played before the short. So we were kind of like, I felt trapped and I didn't know what was happening.
Me neither. I had really no idea, but I think that they were a sponsor of some type.
Right.
But
it was
work?
just...
Are they saved?
I don't know. But that was the thing. It was this music video with a song, and it was just save the children, keep them safe. But it never said really to save them from what. So I was like, molesters, kidnappers.
Right.
Yeah, it never really specified.
Did you guys see
hunger?
any that you particularly oh wow? Because when you're looking at movies, the problem sometimes though is I got to say in any short film block, sometimes you'll just go, oh yeah, they're all really good, and that's kind of even though that's positive, it's also kind of neutral.
Well, I mean,
and
that's
I didn't
the funny
feel that way.
thing.
I found one for me.
Yeah, about the three of us, we all have completely different ones in that regard. The one that won the audience award was You, Me, and Her, which isn't genre at all. It's not horror genre, but it definitely has a sci-fi element to it. And just the idea, I thought it was really funny and witty and well put together. And this whole idea of like encountering multiple versions of yourself.
Yeah,
and like
it stars Michael Keaton. And
from other.
There's lots of versions of Michael Keaton.
Oh, I've never seen that movie. Sorry. No, but I really like that one a lot, and thought I watched that thinking, oh, this is totally a feature. Like they can make this short into a feature length, and it'd be interesting. And then there's one that you loved.
Yeah, look, and Bekah was just mentioning Rose McGowan's, which, we thought Rose McGowan was meant to be there. I think something happened on the day. And I was, when I hear, oh, Rose McGowan's got a short, I don't exactly go, oh, wow, I bet it's going to be, I don't necessarily expect that when it's a celebrity. But, for me, it really worked. It was unnerving, very beautifully made.
It's called Dawn.
It's borderline horror. It's more like, just dark drama. But it looks like it takes place in an offshoot of Mad Men or something in that kind of world. Mm-hmm. But I thought it was very beautifully made, and it did unnerve. It's the only one that kind of unnerved something in me, and I saw it coming. Everything that happens, I saw it coming in. Yet that is actually why it worked. It was like you couldn't stop this inevitability. And I think she did a really good job on tone. And I was likening it to, for those who have read Flannery O'Connor or seen Wise Blood. There's a movie called Wise Blood out there. Just has that tone. It's it's like Southern Gothic without being set in the South or something. But
I was let down by that one.
Yeah, you didn't like that one,
because I mean, her production values were so high. It had such beautiful set decor and things like that, and just a beautiful design to it. And then the plot was just so. I've seen it before. A lot.
See, I like that, and I got what she was going for. It's just it was so grim and unpleasant that when it ended, the second it ended with the last line and the credits started, I kind of turned to who I was with and I was like, I think I hated that. That was my initial gut reaction because it upset me. But as I was telling Elric afterwards, honestly, of all the films, it's the only one I can't stop thinking about. So I'm like, you know what? I guess she did it. She unnerved me and got under my skin to a point where I'm still thinking about her film and everything that led up to the conclusion of it. So,
as Bekah said before, it's kind of Last House on the Lefty, but not the style of that. It's a very beautiful, slick.
It's like Mad Men, Last House on the Left, which is again, if she was going to film it in that style, I really just wanted something different, something to make me say, "Oh, that's an interesting take on it." But it wasn't there for me. I loved the way that it looked.
I thought the inevitability was there. I hadn't seen that before in the character. Like the character understands that this has to happen, which is strange. Which is strange.
Way,
it's hard to talk about that's what Madhouse on the Left.
That's the cool thing about Etheria and the kind of films they showed, and the fact that all three of us have completely radically different opinions of it. So try to catch these films if it comes.
Did you have one?
I liked the jelly wrestling. That one was my favorite.
I did too. That was my second favorite. I thought that was a lot of fun.
I liked that one because it built this elaborate drama out of literally it was a jello wrestling contest at one bar.
Yeah,
it had one location. It had like 3 characters, but I was totally.
But there was a murder
with that.
element. There, you know what? Tonally, it only just popped in my head now because it's Australian. But there's a little bit of the Loved Ones tone. That dark black comedy, but also kind of grim.
Very much like I'm telling you to your face that I love you, but I am actually meaning I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
It had this wonderful.
It's a crowd pleaser. It's a fun movie to watch.
It was. And it was
I liked that one.
It was the last one.
It was kind of a great high note to end it on.
Yeah.
But yeah, so here's my controversial thing that I want to talk about.
I heard the Q&As were great.
The Q&As were great. And I was just about to get that.
I slept through them. But
well, Elric had a little too much to drink. But Rebekah moderated the Q&A both for Soulmate and then with the filmmakers after. And I thought, you did a great job, and it was interesting to hear from all of them. And what I liked about it, I think there was about 5 of them there with you for the shorts.
Which is really complicated to try to do it because it's literally just like here's my question, now go down the line and everyone answer.
Pretty much. So. But my issue is this. Before, I was very excited. I was hoping that I'd get the opportunity to meet Lexi Alexander, who has directed, 2 films, one of which is one of my personal favorites. And I was a little put off by her in general because she's not exactly the most approachable person. So I didn't get to meet her because I was just kind of got this vibe like, I think she hates men. And I think if I say hi to her, she's going to tear me apart. And I've done this with musicians where it's like, there's certain musicians, I just love them so much that I won't go meet them because if they're shitty to me, then it'll affect how I feel about their movies.
Lexi was very nice to me, so
you're a woman, but that's that. But no,
I stood behind her in the red carpet line.
Was it that quote she said about?
No. And here's what bothered me, and it's after the event. So they gave her an inspirational award, and she came up, and she's been kind of, she's one of these female filmmakers that works in the Hollywood system that is very vocal about how unfair this industry is towards female filmmakers, which I totally agree with and understand and accept. The thing that bothered me is you were talking to all 5 filmmakers, and they were all from different places. There's one from Tasmania, Australia. I didn't know Tasmania was a place, but she was from Australia. There was one that originally was from Mexico City, but's working in Vancouver. They were all from very radically different places. Only one of them, who was originally from Australia, is currently working in Hollywood here. And your question to them, which I thought was really great, was, how difficult is it for you as a female filmmaker to get your films made? In your own culture. In your own place. Yeah. And they all had different responses that for the most part were predominantly positive. I mean, the girl from Tasmania is like, well, there's not really that many people making films in Tasmania, so I have no issue doing that or whatever. And it wasn't, they were all positive except the last one that worked in Hollywood. Yep. Who very abundantly was like, I'm from Australia, but I hate it working here. It's so unfair and da-da-da-da. And of course, Lexi got up and started applauding and saying, bravo, bravo. What bothered me is afterwards, I saw interaction on Twitter, and Lexi tweeted, 5 people on that panel and only one was brave enough to speak the truth. So then that Australian filmmaker commented to her, and she's like, hey, it had nothing to do with being brave or not. The question was, what are my experiences like? And I don't have difficulty where I'm from, And then, she kind of like tweeted her back some like statistics of what filmmakers, male to female filmmakers in Australia or whatever it is. And it just it bothered me because it's like, you know what? The whole night is about celebrating all these filmmakers and female filmmakers in particular. That's the whole point. Let's like put aside the negative light of it. Like, yeah, we need to say that it's tough. But my argument is it's tough for anybody working in Hollywood, not just because you're a female filmmaker. Granted, that plays into some of it to an extent. But the more I thought about it, it's like, it was just the idea of her picking on those filmmakers, saying that they weren't brave to talk about how difficult it is for them being female filmmakers, when maybe all of them don't have difficulty being female filmmakers where they're from.
That's why I phrased it that way, because that's one of the things that I approached with the Q&A was I was talking to a girl from Germany, 2 Australians, a Canadian who's actually from Mexico, and that was the whole panel. And I was like, wow, I'm, the only one born and bred in the U.S. sitting on this panel. I know nothing about these people, which is why I wanted to ask that question. But no, and I have to agree with you because I was thinking about this afternoon. I had lunch with Elise from Fearwax, Elise Wax from Fearnet this afternoon. And I was talking about how there are so many filmmakers that I talk with in Hollywood who were my friends, but they're always so dour about everything. And it's just like, man, I'm never going to get a movie made. And I think that's everybody, but you move here knowing that is the struggle.
Yes.
And so am I struggling to make a movie because I'm a female, or am I struggling to make a movie because everyone in Hollywood is struggling to make a movie? People who have made 7 movies are still struggling to make a movie.
You know who doesn't complain about being a female and making movies? Catherine Bigelow.
Obviously.
Never once has she ever written the words, and it's hard. It was hard for her. She still did it. And then once you've done it, you can just look back going, no, I'm just a filmmaker.
And I will say, there are definitely moments, as I have been to pitch meetings and working with agents and various backers and things like that I have gotten comments, and it's never once been, you're a female, you obviously can't pick up a camera. It's always just been like, really, horror? You think you can do something scary? And it's never.
But doesn't that just light more fire?
It does.
Like if that was me and I was getting that same reaction, and we all get it. I think that's just more fire to be like,
I'm getting that on a certain level, but I think that, other filmmakers get a different degree. I think that all of us are getting shit. It's just a matter of where it's coming from. Is there still a kind of an understanding in Hollywood that there is a problem getting female into the industry? Yeah. The numbers prove it. Just on any film set that you will be on, if you take away all the actors, you will be staring at guys. Maybe one female producer, but you will be staring at guys.
Well, I think producers are really, that's changing in producing.
I know a lot of female producers.
But you're right, and directing has always been, and cinematography, there's like, definitely a number who are top of the line in cinematography, and that's changing too with film schools. And film schools and grants and film festivals and the ability to afford cameras, that anyone can get, are definitely radically changing the independent scene. Radically changing the independent scene.
I will say that's one of my biggest differences is on the indie scene.
Yeah, it's
I know
different.
so many females making their own films, shooting, DPing, doing audio, anything. In the actual studios, like when I've done studio set visits, no.
But as Rob says, it's hard for everyone. And the studios are big gates for anyone to get through.
It's a hurdle.
My argument is twofold. Number one is I don't think, I'm sure there's and I want everybody to know that I love Lexi Alexander as a director, and I love her movie.
You just wish she was a man.
But I just wish she looked nicer. But the point is, I meant looked approachable, not nicer, as in like better looking, whatever. Nothing like that.
You just look at boobs.
Yeah. But my argument is, it's hard for everybody. I don't think it's just like in the studio system in terms of working in Hollywood, because I found it suspect that the two people that worked in Hollywood were the two that were complaining about it. And quite frankly, whether you're male or female, everyone complains about it. What you have to do is, if this is what you want to do, if you want to tell stories, then you keep moving forward and do it no matter what. Yep. Because look, James Wan created the goddamn Saw franchise, one of the biggest franchises in horror history of the last decade. Did 2 studio pictures right after. Dead Silence, bomb. Death Sentence, bomb. Hollywood Jail. Did he give up? Did he bitch and complain, oh my God, it's so hard to be a director or whatever? No, he went back and did a small $1 million movie, Insidious, which led to The Conjuring, another studio movie, which led to Fast and Furious 7. The point is, would he have had a different path if he was a female? I don't know. I think it's the determination.
Yeah,
Well, you could also look at minorities and go, oh, well, he's part Asian, he's from Australia.
Exactly.
These are all things that could have been held against someone.
And Bekah's my evidence for determination, because of all the filmmakers that I know out here, and we know a lot, I don't think I know anyone that's made more short films than freaking Bekah. I mean,
well, especially in the last year.
Look, you're married, you have a kid, you have a full-time marketing job, yet you crank out a fucking short film like every month. And I think
I get bored. No, I mean, but see, and that's one of the things. That's one of the things that I even said to Elise today is, for me, everything is about determination. Like, I 100% know I will make a feature. It's just a matter of when.
It's also about putting your energy in the right place. And I think the problem is when I read on Twitter, and a lot of people probably who listening are guilty of it at some point. We all are. But I'll read these Twitter things between groups of people, and they'll be just like it's a complaint chain. And I'm reading, look at those percentages, and this just makes me so mad. Making you mad and telling the world about it is not the same as going, all right, then I'm going to call the Soskas and I'm going to call them. We're going to make an all-woman anthology film. It's going to kick ass. That's a positive use of your time.
Yeah, exactly.
But to complain, it's not, look, I have a lot to complain about.
I've never
I could use this whole show to complain about life,
so
but I don't want to complain about life because it's
But you're
boring.
good about it the other way, because you and I will have lunch and we'll have like our little moments where we bitch about the industry and, oh my God, it costs so much. I can't do this. This sucks. And then the next week I will say, here's an idea for a short, and we're making it. Yeah. And that's the way that it always goes.
Well, and also it comes down to your goals. And and I think if you're a true filmmaker, to me that means and just like making things. Yeah. It's almost like a weird creative. For me, I always say to people, like, I would love to make a studio, like a big thing here, but if I'm some weird professor in Iowa making weird films on his summer vacation, I will be okay. But if I'm not making stuff, I won't be okay. And that's the difference. And I think if you're just a filmmaker, you're just going to make stuff.
Because I'd
love to make big or little,
I was making little dinky movies when I was back in Virginia. And now that I'm here in Hollywood, I just have access to better people. So they look better than they used to. But I'm going to do these whether I'm, here in Hollywood or not. So it's, I've been
teaching the last few weeks these students, and like even yesterday we were doing one that I thought was really impressive, and I'm just watching people who are like 17, 18 to 25, and we're making whole shorts in a day and on like a little set studio, and you're just like, man, their tools are just, there's really not, and they don't, and let me put it this way, that age group are not seeing the difference between men and women. Just like they're not going to see the difference between race when they look at who was president. Yeah. There's a lot of things that will be wiped out the generation below. Yeah. Because they just don't, they're just like, hey, let's all just do it. Cool. I think one of the problems for women, the bigger issue, I think, is about physical beauty, and is about the idea that that's what should be in front of a camera. And it's something to do with performance and acting, that they're often at a young age kind of pushed towards that side of the thing. So I think at a young age they have to be pushed equally, like, hey, oh, you look really good, but you could also, hey, look behind the camera. And for that reason, Rose McGowan's a very good, it's kind of cool that she just made a movie.
Yeah.
And I do have to say that most of the people in the studio system that have given me flack or questioned it when my agent pushes things towards them and things like that have always been of a different generation. And when I say different, I mean like in their 70s still, you know.
Yeah, it will change. That will change.
I'll tell you what'll sell in Topeka type people. The ones who are going, you know, they've been born and, you know, they've been working this thing since the 50s and they, you know, they are very set in their ways. But most of the people that I've approached in the industry, they don't even bat an eye. So it's just, okay, you work at Fangoria. You obviously know horror. Let's rock. So
also, I'm just curious. Wait, did VHS 2 have any woman directors?
No.
So
I don't think any
of them. Maybe part 3.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, that's kind of
my silence
sin.
will speak volume. That's kind of surprising. I know ABCs of Death 2, I think, is a pretty is going for more balance, and I think
the Soskas are in it. Well, I mean, Alma has one in it.
Well, in not the main one.
That's in the secondary one.
It's like the backup, but you know, it's still cool. Anyway, very interesting and interesting stuff, you know, and it's all important to think about with the genre.
Yeah, totally. Do you want to lead our topic?
Well, I do want to talk about it because we actually were going to do something Purge related, and we're not anymore. Things change, and this is something I had wanted to touch on. One thing we don't get to do on the show very much is talk about the absolute classic, what we all would consider to anyone listening to this show because we get so obscure. The main, what's the word? Like in the main canon of cinema for horror fans with like the traditional top 10s, etc.
Mine are still obscure.
Well, you know, that's good. But, we're going to talk twofold. So basically, we don't get to talk about, say, The Exorcist or something very often because we know you all know it. Yeah. So we skip to the weird movies we watch every week. So I wanted us to try, after getting to know 66 episodes now.
68.
No, we're 68 today?
We're at 68 today.
Oh, so 69 is next.
67.
Wow.
Okay.
We're almost septarians.
Yes. So I wanted us to try to do each of our personal top 10 horror films, the ones that we think about, love the most, or maybe affected us the most, however we're going to define it. We're going to do that, but we're also...
So hard.
It is really hard. There's like 3 or 4 that I'm like, oh my God, they're like my favorite movies that didn't make it. And then on top of that, I also want us to look at just what we would consider a classic top 10.
Okay.
Hard to dispute.
That's what I did. I did the top 10 best horror movies just in general that I think everyone should see.
Well, I think we only need one of us to really do it.
My personal faves, because, you know, because of the way that we grew up and the, you know, like,
we all have different.
Honestly, a Nightmare sequel is going to be in my top 10 over the original. And that's because of my personal experience.
Yeah. And I think that's all that we can do. And also, we're also very different with what we like from a movie. And I wanted to do this episode also for those who listen to us, because you hear us mention some of these a lot, but you probably don't actually know what if we were really ranking our absolute 10 favorites, and I think it's valid. So I also want to look at the traditional top 10, what we think it might be, and, you know, talk about why they are classics, and if there's any that are overrated, underrated, whatever. So I don't know if you want to go.
Do you want to do it? Do you want to go? Do you want to count down? Did you guys number yours?
I did.
Yeah.
So we want to do like 10.
Yeah, let's do 10, and obviously we're going to have a lot, probably quite a bit of overlap here and there, not necessarily on the same number. Right. So I'd say just the person who picks the number, the other person could say it's on their list, but let's not go into your reasons yet.
Right. Okay.
Let's go just by numerically.
So, all right. So we're doing personal favorites. These are our personal
we will
top
start
10 horror
with our
movies.
personal top 10, and you can before it, you can preface it with those that just missed out if you'd like, if you're feeling the flutter because you had to leave something on the cutting floor.
Yeah, I got runner-ups.
We have some runner-ups.
Yeah, I got a couple.
We could lead with that, and then we will go to the traditional and kind of go look at why they have lasting value. I mean, this is the stuff we live and breathe, and this is kind of agonizing trying to make a list. But there's some I found for me, all I'll say is the first 5, super easy. I was like, oh, these are the 5 I think about all the time.
Wow.
And after that, the next 5, I was like, oh man, it could go.
It wasn't because honestly,
ways.
My personal top 10 is totally different from what I consider the 10 best horror movies made. Fine. Like totally. So you kick us off. We're doing 10. Start with 10. 10 going backwards. Personal favorites.
Okay, so that doesn't mean like it's
actually. You're covering up your sheet.
Yeah,
I'm not letting you
say
rest. You're just like, nope.
I'm confident you guys couldn't read my handwriting even if you were sitting in front of it, because I wrote it in the car when I was at red lights on the way over. So
I'm gonna lead off with this.
Number 10.
Bud the Chud 2.
Out of here.
You're right.
Such a boring
I
movie.
hate that film. I really hate that film. No, okay, so these aren't necessarily, it's not necessarily the 10th best of the films, but my 10 was Evil Dead 2, and it could go obviously much higher. When I was young, it probably would have been like top 2 or 3. I haven't seen it for a while, but I remember that film like when I'm, 14, 15. I remember seeing Evil Dead and really just, it scared me and it was amazing. And then I remember seeing Evil Dead 2 and thinking this is the greatest movie ever made because it remade itself and then made it better and made it more fun and playful and just crazy. So that movie could move, anywhere on the list, but it was hard because Dawn of the Dead just missed out, because of Evil. I basically got to the end of my list and went, oh, well, I love both of them. But for some reason, I was only putting Evil Dead 2 ahead because it meant so much to me when I was young.
Right.
I wouldn't say it has the same impact on me now necessarily, but it probably would if I saw it on a big screen.
Right.
Because it's just so playful. And it's the only real comedy kind of one that made, horror comedy, because Reanimator is so close as well. That was one of the ones I just missed out on. It's very hard for me because I loved that as a kid. So yeah, we're starting Evil Dead 2.
Wow. All right. Are there any other Evil Dead movies in your top 10? Your personal?
No, but I kind of view them.
That's the one.
They all kind of, to me, I love all of it.
All right. 2 is kind of a good amalgamation of all.
I think that's kind of why. And 3 goes is much more of a comedy, and 1 is a straight horror film, which is, great. So anyway, that's 10.
Bekah, number 10.
Satanica Pandemonium.
Whoa. I did not see that coming.
What is that one?
It's Satanico Pandemonium. Well, most people know it as the character from Dusk Till Dawn, but she's actually named after a 1970s movie. It's Mexican. It is about a convent. It was part of the nunsploitation films, but it's by far my favorite. And it's the only...
You and nuns.
I've always...
Wait for her to just bust out a deep cut on her number 10.
I know. The rest of them are actually pretty well known.
No, that's good. Yeah,
that's good.
I was disappointed with myself because I didn't have... I thought mine would be really out there, and I'm like, actually, when it comes to really the best stuff...
They're pretty obvious, right?
They are still the best,
Yeah, well, some of mine, they're deep cuts, but they're well-known deep cuts. So
what's what happens in that film? Because I've never heard
like this one because it's a lot of everything, and it's also a social commentary. So it's the standard kind of nun discovers that she doesn't want to be trapped here, goes off, starts sleeping with a boy from the village, goes crazy. But I like it because it's also got commentary where there's African-American nuns there, and they have to sleep in the barn. So it's got a lot about segregation with it.
What's the horror element? What happens?
Well, it's the same. Every single one of the nunsploitation movies have the same setup where the nuns then become convinced that she has Satan. Sometimes Satan actually exists in the film. Sometimes he doesn't.
Like the Devils or something.
Yeah. In this one, the Devils is on my runner-ups.
It's a great film.
But in this one, then Satan doesn't exactly exist. It's more of kind of just embodied by her. But then the whole nunnery will go insane, and she'll usually go on a killing spree in this one. This one's more subtle than some of the other ones. But I like this one. It's really vivid colors. The nuns' outfits are blue in this. So it's
I bet I'm going to look this film up, and it's going to be black and white.
It isn't.
I'll be like, Bekah!
No, this one, it's quite nice. I like this one. Out of it's not my only nun film on here because, like I said, The Devils and Ms. 45 are in my runner-ups. But yeah, it's the one that makes my top 10.
Yeah, because they're all kind of fringe horror. It's that weird zone. Devils is probably a little closer. Ms. 45 is thriller, but it's fine for this show.
Most people consider Ms. 45 to be rape revenge.
I think exploitation, all that stuff comes under our show.
Yeah.
We can do whatever we want.
So yeah, but Satanica Pandemonium.
All right.
Right on. Number 10 for me is Dead Alive.
Nice to see.
AKA Brain
Very
Dead.
glad that made your list.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I love it. I mean, I always have, and I my tastes tend to fall in horror comedy in general. But the reason that movie's so special is because, you never forget when you see something that you're like, I've never seen anything like that before. And a big thing for me, both in high school and then post high school, is I had a small group of friends that we all got together, and I was kind of the one that would always seek out the weird films and introduce everyone to it. Like, I'm the one that showed all my friends the Evil Dead movies, etc. And I just remember Dead Alive just being like, wait till you guys see this, See,
I was going to ask you about that because for me, this is most of the stuff I get the short end from living somewhere else. That full theatrical everywhere in New Zealand.
Not us, yeah.
So that was really cool seeing that in a theater, and everyone in New Zealand kind of saw that in the theater. because it was a big New Zealand film.
Yeah, I'd rented. I remember there was we had a small party in high school with, a sleepover party where we rented like 5 horror movies in a row, and one of them was Bad Taste.
Yeah.
So that was the first time I even got...
Derek's Don't Run.
Yeah, it's just like, you see that, and I remember in the first 5 minutes, we're like, what the hell are we watching? So I was very aware of Dead Alive.
I got a chunky bit.
Yeah, I mean,
such a good movie.
Dead Alive had the advertisement on the box, the goriest Fright film ever made.
Mm-hmm.
And you're kind of like, yes, I want to see this, the goriest movie. And there's that dude that made that Bad Taste movie. So yeah, I can't wait. So yeah, that's always been my number 10.
Yeah, it's a great film. I believe, and I'll just tell you now because it doesn't come. It's not on my list, but it is on my list. If you know what I mean. Like I won't be saying it today, but really spiritually, it's in there.
It's on my runner-up
crazily
list.
Enough.
For me, the personal faves are the ones that I get excited showing people about. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I feel like, oh, you've never seen this, let's watch that. You know.
For me, they're the ones I always call them my desert island movies. Like if I was trapped on a desert island and these are the only 10 horror films I could have, I would be perfectly happy.
This actually is, I think, also what kind of why we're all so different, because I think rather than most of mine, when I get to the top 5, they're all much more personal, and I'm almost the opposite, where I don't want to share these, and there are movies that I just keep thinking there's something that happened in them, whether it was one moment, like one of the films only really that's the ending of it, but it was enough that I keep thinking about the movie forever, and it becomes this weird personal like thing that I keep going back to. Going, it doesn't mean I wouldn't want to share it, but you know what I mean? It's weird. It's just how you experience things, and horror comedies do have that. You want to share with people.
They're great communal experience.
They are.
I mean,
you
just have a good time. It's like a Friday night movie.
Yeah.
Like Last House on the Left and I Spit in Your Grave are not Friday night.
No.
You don't get together with buddies and beers being like, let's watch, Last House.
I've never done that. I've always seen those films alone. I'd be curious to see how.
Oh, God.
It's very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I watch screenings of both, and it's very much like dead silence in the theater. No one really knows how to respond or talk on the way out. It's weird.
No.
So.
I bet Camille Keaton would just be making jokes all the way through.
Oh,
She's pretty awesome. I mean, she's pretty cool. But
number 9 for you.
Oh, number 9. Okay, so this one was actually a complete toss-up, and I knew he would be in there. I had no idea which one to choose until just now. But I love I think The Tenant's one of those just fantastic movies. And at the last second, Tenant's always been one of my favorite thrillers. But at the last second, I thought, no, fuck it, I'm gonna say Rosemary's Baby, and I couldn't separate that. And the only reason I think I'm putting Rosemary's Head is that I saw it again recently on film when Mike showed it.
Yeah,
and it made me realize it could also be in my top 3. I just think it's a great movie, not even horror film, just great movie. Like I think it's so well made. The Tenant's more like one of my weird kind of movies that I personally just love. But I think Rosemary's Baby is just fantastic.
I always like Fearless Vampire Killers.
See, I never liked that. I always thought it was goofy. Like,
it is goofy.
Silly. There was a silliness that I didn't like to it, but it's it's fun. And Sharon Tate's hot. I'll watch Sharon in anything. She's dreamy. But no, I really think Polanski's one of the most important filmmakers to me personally when I got into filmmaking, and I still think he's one of the best just formal directors. And I just think Rosemary's Baby is such an interesting movie. I think people think it's maybe dated or something. If you watch it again, it feels so contemporary to whenever you're watching it. And I was very pleased when that miniseries did so poorly, so no one's going to think about that as Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah.
And a great soundtrack. Oh, my God.
Definitely. My number 9 is one that it made me laugh a lot when I was a kid. I used to think it was hilarious, and I still watch it and crack up just the same, even though I think that if I had watched it for the first time now, I probably wouldn't think it's quite as funny. Student Bodies.
I don't even remember. I mean, I know about it, but I've never really.
Yeah, it's the first real spoof horror movie.
Yep. And
it's totally. Yeah.
It was definitely kind of a virginal thing when it came out, and it's spoofing a lot of the horror genres, mostly slashers. But it does a lot to make fun of them, and it's smart about it too. In some parts it's just kind of goofy. But it's one of these films that I will quote till the day I die. That my friends that watched it with me when I was a kid, we still have like Horsehead bookend jokes about it and things like that.
I gotta watch it.
Yeah, I
probably saw it when I was young, but I don't recall.
I have a feeling that if I watched it now for the first time, I'd find it kind of sophomoric.
Yeah.
But just because it still embodies I become an 8-year-old when I watch it, and the sex jokes are just as funny, and Delbert peeing on the floor is just as funny as it was back then. So I kind of revert back in my humor.
That's a fun one. With I remember when I first moved here, Spooky, and I'd never seen it, I thought I caught parts of it at one point. Spooky Dan showed it in his backyard with 10 people.
We should do a screening.
That was like the fun way to see it.
Yeah, it's best with people because it is. I mean, it's definitely a horror comedy spoof where you need to have other people around you laughing.
Like
Otherwise,
Sleepaway Camp or something. Sleepaway Camp 2.
Hey,
it's
one or two.
So, but yeah, it's one of my faves. And I just heard because I was talking about my list with somebody today, and I heard they're remaking it now, but it's like a small indie, like really low budget thing that's remaking it. So I don't know if it'll reach the original. For me,
there's no need to remake that.
No, there isn't.
It's a silly idea.
Spoofing a very set time period because you can tell it spoofs Halloween and Friday the 13th, and it's definitely like it was the first one to do this. Yeah. And it's one of these ones where like instead of saying like Halloween, it opens with a house day after Halloween, and it even spoofs the titling and the masked killer and the breather.
It feels like those movies.
Yeah, and it does. It's got that grainy
feels like
feel.
An 80s horror movie, even though it's not.
And because of that, I mean, I don't think that you can remake it and have it embody the same slasher feel because it does. It has the same aesthetic as those films, so it works.
There wasn't a real spoof on torture porn, was there? Besides the haunted house guys who make jokes.
Yeah, no.
There wasn't anything from that period that was kind of light. I guess they were kind of jokey themselves occasionally.
I think like what Scary Movie 4 didn't that have Billy the Puppet in it or something?
I mean, I didn't last that long.
Yeah,
they're
pretty awesome.
I don't know.
Those.
I think I saw the first one. Number 9.
Yeah. So for me, it's believe it or not, The Exorcist 3.
Yes,
Legion. Good inclusion.
Legion.
Nice.
Yeah, then that's the weird thing. I will not argue that the original Exorcist is one of the top 10 movies of all time. But for me personally, I love the third one. I saw it at I love the first movie. I've only watched it a few times in my life because it just made such an impact on me that I almost want my memory to be that potent of how scary I found it. But 3 was the one I got to see in theaters. And it was, we revisited it at the New Bev several months back at midnight. And, you got George C. Scott and Jason Miller and Brad Dourif, like this great cast, this great little murder mystery. There's a lot of creepy elements involving Catholicism in it. I mean, I grew up Catholic, so just the imagery. And there's at least one, if not two, of the all-time best scares ever put on film that still to this day get me and still work because I remember a few years ago showing it to friends that had never seen it. And that part, you know which one I'm talking about if you've seen it, scared the shit out of them. And I'm like, yes. And it's amazing to me that some movies just have those scares that it doesn't matter what age you are. I feel like Don't Look Now is one of those. That ending. Right. I saw that movie as an adult and that ending scared me.
It's very adult.
There's certain things that just, certain moments in certain films that are always going to be scary. Just the way they're executed.
Yep.
So number 9, Exorcist 3 Legion.
I always found that one. And this is just me. But I mean, I saw the original Exorcist when I was really young and I did not grow up in a Christian household at all. And it never scared me. I was just like, oh, look, the girl's a demon.
I wonder if it would scare you.
But the third one scares me.
I wonder, though, if it scare you down. I mean, just having a daughter, I wonder if eventually it would scare you. I do think the religion side maybe is lost on some of us, but I got to say, I was very effective. Even when they did the re-release a couple years ago, and I saw it in theaters, and the little bits they added, there's some
the
really
spider walk down the stairs,
scary
terrifying stuff.
And when we talk about the actual, what is the top 10, I think that when I get down to what I think the top 2 are, I think it's really interesting because one's an indie and one's a studio film, and I think that's really interesting. Like one is a big studio film, like The Exorcist is a big studio film. I don't know if for anyone who's never read it, a really interesting insight into that movie is the making of. I think it was it was one of those film magazines back in the day wrote behind the scenes of all the crazy shit that was going on that set, like the place burned down, how cold it was kept, all the people, I can't remember who died, but a lot of bad stuff was going on while they're making that film, and it feels infused with that dread somehow.
One of the, I want to say it's one of the research books, or no, creation books. There was a whole series of them from the late 90s, but there's one, I think it was called Hollywood Hexes. And a huge chunk of the book focuses on the Exorcist set and how weird shit was going on. So.
So we'll wait and see what everyone's list is. But I think that's...
Isn't there a famous John Landis quote that he, because he was a Jewish boy, he's the one guy that walked out of the Exorcist like, what was so scary about that?
That's pretty
so I think that's the thing. I mean, I was brought up Catholic and I remember going to catechism and seeing the statues. And so anything of any imagery of that or good or evil, and the idea that if you even doubt your faith for a second, you could be possessed. Like little Rob G was like, oh my God.
Well, the saddest thing though is that now there will be people, probably some of them listening to the show right now, who will have seen Devil Inside, who will have seen what was that, Last Exorcism, all those, The Rite, which is bloody awful, the new film Deliver Us From Me. They'll see all of those before they get to it. and then they'll go, oh, it's not that bad. But it's like, no. The girl goes downstairs while there's a priest in the house and someone playing the piano and starts like, stabbing herself in the vagina with a
she pees on the floor.
Pees, well, but she does at some point. So,
but that was my only creepy moment when she looks at the guy and she says, "You're going to die up there." That was like my only creepy moment of the film.
But you know what? The language, it's like they can't get away with saying the stuff she says in those movies you just mentioned. So I think it's still effective.
And I think it's an interesting. It's no Abby.
But what is?
Well, actually, sorry, Abby is the Exorcist, just with a black cast.
I give it mad props for, if nothing else, being a horror film and winning Oscars.
That's true.
That rarely happens.
Great score.
Yeah.
And makeup. So we're number 8. Okay, number 8 could go much higher on my list, has before. This one, I won't even take too long to talk about it because we've talked about it before. My theory with this film, I would have this as the number 1 horror film of all time if there was no sequels, and that's Nightmare on Elm Street. But because of the sequels, not saying the sequels aren't great because some of them are amazing, but because of it, he is no longer a scary character. But him on his own, when I was a kid, I was thinking about what makes Freddy scarier than all the others easily is... Think about Michael Myers. We're all scared of sharks, right? But it's not like we're personally scared of sharks. Like, it's not personal. There's just sharks and we don't want to get sharks. Michael Myers is just a shark. He's just out there. He's like a shark. There's nothing personal about him. There's nothing personal about Jason. There's nothing personal about most killers. Freddy, in that first film, is the most personal. He gets into something you don't even get, which is your subconscious.
Right.
You don't even understand your dreams when you wake up in the morning. That's the point of the subconscious. And he gets in there, noodles around, and then makes that the thing that's going to do. And he's, a creepy pedophile. That is, to me, like, absolutely frightening. And when I first saw that film and there's build up, I think I told on the story before, the kids who were going to show it to me, I thought we were all watching it for the first time. And it turned out they'd just watched it before I got there. And so they knew exactly I think when he comes into that boiler thing and that somebody like grabbed me, and I remember like I probably almost literally pissed my pants. I was that scared. I mean, I was terrified. Probably the last time I can remember being actually terrified by a movie because I didn't know who Freddy was. Now, well, Freddy's got TV shows and blah, blah, blah. And so it does, while it takes away from the power, I can still remember when I was making this list.
Tread lightly what you say. We don't want to lose Mike Mendez.
That's right.
Yes.
Show, if you mention
so I won't mention that one. Don't worry, Mike. But no, I do look back and I go, no, that was some powerful shit. And 3 is awesome. We'll talk about that. But that first film, there's something so great about it. And I still, to this day, believe if it was standalone, there would never have been to me, that would have been the scariest movie.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I think back to when we had Savage Steve Holland on the show way back. And the thing that you guys both hit the nail on, especially with that movie, was it's when you see a horror movie that you could not have thought it up yourself.
Right.
When you're seeing something, you're like, how the hell did this happen?
That's why I didn't like Rose McGowan's. I think that was it. You just hit the nail on the head for me.
It has to be something that you're like, I couldn't even possibly imagine this.
Yeah, because like Jason, you can now, especially post it, you're like, oh yeah, Killer in a Mask.
Yeah.
That existed, but there was something about saying coming into your dreams and
it's right.
But yeah, I really think that's a tremendous,
great one.
Tremendous film.
Yeah.
Number 8, Bekah.
Mulholland Drive.
Wow.
So that's one for me that I can watch on repeat. I will notice something new every time. I will come up with a new meaning every time. And it's what you said at the beginning. That's one of those films that I always used to show that one in my class. It was the last film I showed in my class because it took them that long of film training to understand it. Yeah, and it took us a full class to view it. My classes were always 3 hours long, and it would take like the entire class, and then we would have barely any time to talk about it. But
it's hard to define like his films. I left Lynch off. My main note on my pad is no David Lynch films, and yet all of them could be my number 1 because they are the most influenced I was by any filmmaker, and I love them all. Lost Highway still feels the most like a horror film, but there's parts of Mulholland Drive that are. There's parts of Eraserhead they're dread films.
Yeah,
for sure. A lot of them are dread films. But I think it's a good inclusion. I mean, I think it's totally valid, and it's one of the best readings of that film I ever had. A professor, and he read it basically as like kind of was talking about Wizard of Oz and Hollywood is Oz, and he was like breaking it all down. It was stuff I hadn't really seen in it before, and then I watched it again. I was like, oh, now it's another movie.
Yeah,
that's the cool thing about Lynch. Like, you can read something, rewatch his movie, and go, oh, now it's a different movie. Yeah, well, for people that have problems getting into his films because of the non-narrative nature to them, or trying to figure it out. I recently watched Mulholland Drive with Darren Bousman not too long ago, and I don't know, we were like a half hour into it, and he just turned to me and was like,
this is just like a series of really great scenes.
Yeah,
like,
that's pretty much it.
It doesn't matter that they don't connect or that they do. It's just that every scene, if you just watch it on its own as a scene, is so good.
But that's not typical Lynch. And for those who don't know, I'm sure a lot of you do. That really is. No, they're not. They really aren't.
Lost Highway?
Yeah, but that's not ever like a scene. That's like one of his most fluid films at all.
There's nothing fluid about that film.
It never feels like there's scenes. It's incredibly fluid. I think it's one of the tightest movies in terms of like just this one idea. It's like one dream being stretched out.
No one in the history of film has ever called Lost Highway very fluid.
No, it's fluid and tight, but like a dream. It's like it's not, it's more like it's a psychogenic fugue. But no, with Mulholland, it's because they were scenes. They were meant to be 10-minute increments of a television pilot.
Right.
So it wasn't. And then if you think about what you were saying with Darren and then watch the last 30 minutes, that doesn't feel like a scene.
No.
It feels like a movie.
Right.
And that's because it was shot as a movie. And so I really do think that, but it doesn't take away just because somehow it all worked.
But the last 30 minutes, at least under my interpretation, the last 30 minutes is when we return to real life.
Right. Yeah.
And
everything else is
the prior 2 hours that are the scenes, like, the creature behind Winkies or the whole Silencio thing. These are all just amazing little scenes, but they're all part of the dream under my understanding of what the film is about.
It feels like a dream of Hollywood, like what Hollywood could be, but whose dream is the question?
Yeah.
Is it David Lynch's? Is it some of the characters? It's an endlessly fascinating film, and the first time I've ever thought Bekah did something good.
Oh, go fuck yourself.
By putting that on her list. That makes up for Last Boy Scout.
Hey, you haven't even revisited that.
Oh my God.
It's
amazing.
I have seen it. I haven't revisited it.
You haven't revisited in a while.
Okay, I will go there.
Okay.
Better.
Well, I'm sure we'll talk about Lynch again. So next time we mention Mulholland Drive, I have a really good Mulholland Drive story.
Okay.
But I'm going to save it for next time. Number 8 for me is David Cronenberg's The Fly.
Ooh,
I love all his movies. The Dead Zone is my favorite Cronenberg movie, but there's just something about The Fly where if I catch it on cable at any point, it's just kind of like I'm mesmerized and I go with it.
And it's the acting.
It's the acting. It's just such a simple, straightforward story. There's not much to it. At least from memory. I mean, it's been a while since I've seen it, but I just remember it's like, and I remember it kind of taking off like, right off the bat, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I think it moves pretty quick once he's in there.
The gore kind of pushes it forward too, because you're literally watching things fall off.
Yeah,
he's definitely a filmmaker. I would love to see more studio films by him.
Oh yeah,
because I think if he just kept getting bigger and bigger, it would have been interesting.
It would have been interesting what he does with the money and stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, there was a period where he almost did one of those Hunger Game movies, which would have been kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But no, The Fly, and again, it was one of those movies that even though I was a horror fan and into gore and stuff, I found myself having to look away anytime he would say like, oh, you know how flies, vomit to eat their food. He's like, that's what I've inherited.
That's rough,
and he's watching the videotape and you're like, oh God, are they going to show it? And I had to cover it. Like, I'd be like, oh, I can't watch it. Of course they don't, but then you see nails falling off.
But at the end when he pukes
horrific.
on the guy in his arms, I find that hard to look at. It's like, oh God.
It's kind of amazing.
Because everyone hates flies. Flies are the most grotesque thing you deal with on a daily basis.
It is the only thing I can kill with no regard.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I don't kill spiders. I don't kill crickets. I will kill a housefly. I don't even think about it.
It's also my favorite punchline joke because, like, anytime you see a giant fly like go into the room, I just love screaming out, "Holy shit! That fly's the size of Jeff Goldblum!" So that's my number
Cronenberg's my other main mission because he's one of my other favorite filmmakers. But I found it very hard to like go. What's his one? There's him and Lynch are both like that. It's like what's their one movie I'd put on my list? I'm like, I don't know, maybe Videodrome. But then I'd go, well, I love his early films like Shivers, but none of them quite made my top 10, and yet there'd probably be in my next 10. There'd probably be 5 of them.
Yeah, again, I don't
know.
He's
higher up on my list, but I'll get there.
Yeah, it's hard. It'd be harder for me to show The Dead Zone to a bunch of friends, which I love more. The Fly's the more arguably better movie to show.
Yeah, I wonder, I'd be interested with him if he'll ever make a film in that tone, because they've been certainly a little more moving towards, like, he had almost action and mafia.
Yeah.
And then, history of violence. And then now his new film sounds like it's a satire on Hollywood.
Yeah.
Which
looks
got good reviews.
Yeah,
it could be
I can't wait to see it.
But I'm just glad he's getting to do things.
Yeah.
And I hope David Lynch comes back one day.
Yes.
Number 7 is getting higher and higher on my list every year. It's Hellraiser. And that film I loved as a kid, and I love Hellraiser 2 equally in a lot of ways. But Hellraiser 1, it's not this. I guess we've talked about it before. It's not the Cenobites. It's the love triangle. It's the Frank and Julie. I find that stuff the sexuality when we watched it at the Jump Cut and when we watched it on the Blu-ray for that festival, and Doug Bradley was there. There's something about that movie that every time I see it, the sexuality of that story is like, it just gets to me and gets under my skin and creeps me out. And you know, I think there's some hokiness to the effects in the last 10 minutes, and there's a lot of things towards the end that dissipated a little bit. But other than that, I think it's, and the other thing it is so, it feels like we were talking about Nightmare, so original. It feels original. Whether it is or not, that's always up for debate, but it feels like a new voice.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. It was Clive Barker. And I love Nightbreed too, but it's not the same. It doesn't work. This works on that unconscious Freud. There's something working away on you, and I think it's a really great film. And I think even if you took out everything with Cenobites, which is what it's remembered for, it would still hold up as a great, tense, dark film. Big fan.
Nice.
All right. Number 7, Bekah.
This one's a little weird. Cube.
Oh, yeah. No, it's a great choice.
Oh, okay, cool. I was waiting for it's like a sci-fi original.
What? Plus Vincenzo's are really cool.
Compared to your last 3, which
I know. Satanica Pandemonium, Student Bodies. Okay, well, I'm
Mulholland Drive. This is the most horror of the bunch.
I know. So Cube for me, I love it because it's so simplistic, but there's so much to it. But then there's nothing to it. So I love that element, and it's another one of those that I can watch in repetition and just enjoy the same every time. So.
And it's cool that it's an indie film at a time where like you think indie, think small, and yet you see the set and you're like, whoa.
And it's one room.
And it's just one cube the whole time. Yeah. I love that angle.
It's very inspiring as an independent film.
And when I first watched it, I didn't catch that all the characters were named after prisons.
I didn't catch that either.
Leavenworth, they're all named after different prisons. So, and even like Kazan is named after one for the criminally insane. So yeah, it's really neat the way that they folded in all these other things to it. So.
My only negative about that film is I remember one performance feeling hokey. I think it was the big black guy, and I remember just thinking his performance style one of them just felt a little over the top. The other guy from Pin's awesome. The guy who's in all of Vincenzo films. Yeah, no, but it's a really cool, and you can see like Beyond the Black Rainbow obviously owes so much. It's Canadian, has the same visual kind of flair, but interesting choice.
Thank you.
Sci-fi, horror-ish.
Yeah.
What do you got? Number 7? 7 for me is Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
Oh, wow.
Plain and simple. Again, it's kind of like when I asked you, did you have other Evil Deads in there? You went to 2 because that's kind of a good beginner movie, because it kind of that it's what that whole franchise is about. For me, it's, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. It's a great time capsule of that period. And it's, I love the Wolfman. I love the Creature from the Black Lagoon, but I like seeing all the monsters together in this kind of comedic movie, which is just thoroughly entertaining and fun. And thankfully, it's the comedy separate from the monsters. They're never making fun of the monsters. It's just everyone's reaction to them.
When did you see it? When you were a kid, or?
Yeah, I definitely saw it really young. I saw all of them at the same time, and I remember that one being the one that I loved the most because it's like the character, Abbott and Costello are acting the way that you expect to act if you come, face to face with those characters. So yeah, I just love it. If I was going to show somebody a Universal monster movie, that's probably the one that I think they would enjoy the most.
It's cool. It's good that one made your list.
Yep.
I don't have strong memories of it now, so it's hard to. I saw so much of that so young,
They play it pretty frequently on the big screen, and I love seeing it that way. But as Halloween approaches, we'll have to watch that one.
I was never a huge fan of Abbott and Costello. I need to go back and rewatch it too. I saw it when I was a kid, and it was just kind of hokey to me, so I never really watched. But I didn't really like the Universal monsters that much when I was a kid either. So,
do you like them now?
I like some of them now. Wolfman, Creature, I'm into. The Mummy, I find amusing. The original Dracula, I'm still not as into, and Frankenstein. He's okay. I like his bride better.
Wow.
The Spanish version is more interesting of Dracula.
Yeah.
I think so as well.
And I'm a big Browning film. I think Todd Browning's like the bee's knees, but that film it does feel quite hokey. It just doesn't quite work. Number 6. This is the one I was referencing before. This is one of those ones that there's a lot of build up to seeing this movie. I'd heard about it for years, read about it in a magazine, couldn't get a copy, finally saw it, and there's just the good scenes in this movie are as good as are what I want cinema to be and what I want to make in a film, and that's the Beyond. The Beyond for me is like the Beyond could go even higher. Like there's sometimes where I'd go so far as to say there's moments and like the ending, my favorite thing ever of anything. But there's a couple scenes that are like kind of tortury, the stuff in the house that don't quite work. But as a whole experience, I find that movie to be just like whoa.
Okay, I'm so glad you said that because I love the movie. It's one of my favorite Italian films. But there are so many plot moments where I'm like, I don't really know what that was.
But I think Fulci, what separates him from Bava, because I think it's not even up for debate who's better filmmakers. Bava is an incredible filmmaker.
Yeah.
Now he could have been like Hitchcock, make anything, but Bava is making something. I think that's more from the subconscious. A little.
You mean Fulci?
Oh, sorry, Fulci. Yeah, Fulci's making strange movies that really do have narrative problems, and yet when you just go with them, man, I think they're
nightmare logic. I've always explained it as nightmare logic.
It's nightmare logic,
tapping
definitely.
into that sort of feeling.
And he's, and it's just something about that film in particular. And when I saw it, I think, what was the other name for it? The Seven Gates of Hell or something.
Yeah.
I think I saw it. I think that was the title when I saw it. I tracked down probably a VHS back in the day. I can honestly say this. There's no film I'm more excited about seeing again. I haven't seen it in a couple years.
Yeah.
And when that comes to Blu-ray this year from Grindhouse, there's nothing, like literally nothing I'm looking more forward to than just sitting down to watch it again, looking as good as it could look.
Yeah, same here.
Just to get
same here.
And if we ever did an episode about films you'd most want to see a direct sequel, definitely. I want to see, like Insidious 2. I want to go to the further.
Into the void.
Yeah, they're in the void. I want to go there. What, wow. Like,
yeah.
And I've only recently saw some photos behind the scenes of them on that set.
Yeah.
And it almost totally ruins it. It's like, no, I can't. Because it's really, they really sell it. It's not some cheap effect. It's like, oh my God.
It's like a field of bodies that
yeah,
they're
and
walking into.
It's just got a look that I've never seen before. I really, if you've never seen it, just go, wait till this Blu-ray comes out. And I like a lot of his. I like City of what's the one with the priest hanging himself there?
City of the
I think
Living
that's
Dead.
also really effective as
one.
a zombie film. But see, I don't think of The Beyond as a zombie. I don't know how to classify The Beyond. It's like a few different movies, but they're all interesting.
It's
so
like
anyway.
a haunted house film as well.
a
It kind
haunted
of
house,
roots
and
itself
then
as a haunted
zombies,
house,
and then weird psychic blonde girl with white eyes. I mean, and the dog. It's just awesome.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll get Bob Murawski at some point, so we can. That would be another one I'd want to talk to him. For Grindhouse.
Nice.
Anyway, that's The Beyond.
Bekah 6.
Number 6. This is another one I'm scared you guys are going to make fun of. Demon Knight.
All right.
Oh,
wait,
God.
no, my brain just broke because I was thinking demons and then demon. Oh, no, demon. You know what? I would normally make fun of you because this is ridiculous that it's in your top 10.
It is still in my top 10.
Personal.
But I did just see it with Joe Madry, and we both watched it at Beyond Fest last year.
Yeah.
And we watched it after Almost Human, and it's amazing.
It holds up so well.
It's so funny.
That's one of these films. Demon Knight is
really
something that I have watched every year since it came out. And no matter how many times I watch it or what time period I'm in, it holds up just the same. It still has a kick-ass soundtrack. The effects still rock. It's still got a great plot and good acting.
What's the deal? Ernest Dickerson gets a lot of love on this show, and we haven't had him here.
Yeah.
Doing all the biggest Walking Dead, Tales from the Hood, right?
Yeah.
And he did a great job on that. And also you get to see Demon Dick Miller in that. It's one of the only films where Dick Miller turns bad for a little period. And but Billy Zane's lines are Billy Zane's just so great. In that
I
film. He's
loved
hilarious.
him in that movie, and then I was so disappointed when I saw him in Titanic. Like, he was my reason for seeing Titanic because he's hot in Demon Knight.
I bet you could do an awesome cut where it's his character in Demon Knight every time like they're running away from him in Titanic, and it just cuts to those lines in Demon Knight. That would be cool.
I love the mythos of it. I love the siege in the house and everything.
It's a lot of fun.
So yeah, I think it's just a really fun movie.
It has that aesthetic that is so, is it 90s? It's just like so of that time, and
it's
yet
crisp.
you don't care.
Yeah.
It's like fun, and I think probably it benefits from being that one location, and it doesn't seem like it's trying to go too big. I wonder what the budget of that would have been at the time.
Because it still has a lot of effect. I mean, the demons are obviously creatures, but there's a lot of them. And it does have a lot of effects because the movie transcends the house at points. Like whenever they go into one of the characters' dream, they're teleported to like other locations. And
you won't hear me talking about heavy metal very often on the show, but I will say that Pantera song on that Cemetery Gates. I listened to that soundtrack a lot, and that was a great song.
Yeah.
But yeah, that film's great, and I was really disappointed by Bordello Blood. I remember that feeling of then going, Bordello. No, I like Angie Dickerson, or is that her name? No.
Dickinson.
Angie.
No, it isn't.
Everhart.
Angie Everhart.
And just, I thought she was pretty great in it. But no, there's something about that movie it's okay, but it's just a little.
I liked it. I liked that one. It's definitely more hokey than Demon Knight, but
Dennis
I enjoyed
Miller's
it.
the lead. So.
And even the third one of the Tales from the Crypt movies, Ritual, isn't that bad?
I've never seen that one.
It's not that bad. It's Tim Curry and Jennifer Grey, and it's voodoo. And I mean, it kind of got buried, but it's not bad.
Huh, okay.
So number 6, Demon Knight.
Number 6 for me is Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon.
Oh, didn't we have that dude on once?
I think we've seen that dude around.
And I'm hungry. In jokes, yeah, that's a fun movie.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what more I can say about it that we haven't said previously. It's just, you know what, because we watch and live and breathe these movies and know so much about them. I mean, that's the one thing that I think makes horror unique over all the other genres is that we really do break down and try to figure out logistics behind why characters do things or why killers come back and this and that. And it's like one of us made a movie about it. Like somebody wrote a script that, makes totally valid every 80s slasher movie we grew up with. Like it was all part of a plan. It never was, but the fact that they were brilliantly able to kind of write this story and us living through a character that wants to be just like them, it's brilliant. It's just one of those that, it's a lot of fun and just so, I'm jealous I didn't write it because you're like, this is brilliant. Why didn't I think of this idea?
And I think because of when it came out.
And the acting. I mean,
the performances
Nathan is amazing in it.
Yeah. And the girl's great too.
The girl too.
And then what's from Walking Dead comes in.
Scott Wilson's amazing
Scott Wilson's great
in it.
It's one of those, I think I probably mentioned it when we had him on the show, but I avoided that film like the plague.
Right.
And I just remember seeing it and hearing about it and going, oh God, it was right when, it's post-Scream, it's self-referential, and the guy's a killer. And I just remember going, I think I only finally put it on because somebody I respected had mentioned how good it was. I was like, okay. And then I was watching and going, wow, this is so fun. And it really is. It nails all of them.
Yeah, totally.
So good choice.
Thank you. All right, we're in the top 5 now.
Top 5.
Holy smokes! Let's do it.
This is where it gets really personal. This film will never not be in my top 10 ever. I love this movie with such a passion. I did not like it the first time I saw it because I did not know what the hell I just saw, and that is Suspiria.
Wow.
And I'll go this far. I also don't even think it's Argento's best film, objectively speaking.
No, I agree with that. I would say Bird with Crystal Plumage is his best.
I think Tenebrae maybe, but they're all good thrillers. It's Deep Red, depending what cut. But there's Suspiria is the only one. I think 20 years from now, I bet you will be Inferno that I become really enamored by because it's so non-narrative. But Suspiria is just like, man, that first time you watch that, and it was a friend introducing me, and I was probably 16 and put it on. And I was like, wasn't mad, but I really didn't know what I had just seen because I'd never seen colors even like that. I was like, it doesn't make sense. And then it's brutal when it's brutal. And then as every year, I just I love it. I love it. I love it. If I see anything from Jessica Harper, everything about that film is kind of like a magic trick. And the other thing we have to remember is we just won't see horror films made like this anymore. And not because of imaginations, but because of budgets and scale, like these giant set pieces of painted buildings.
Like they painted the elevator. You're never going to see that.
And it's just
not in this type of budgets that we're in right now.
Yeah, it's really just one of those movies that, you can, and I hope they don't remake. I don't need a remake of that even. Okay, if Jocelyn Donahue had been in the remake, I would have definitely been pretty excited to see what they did with it, but not with David Gordon Green directing it. Like the guy's just mainstream comedy. It's like, figure. Anyway, for me, that I don't need it. I don't think you can remake what that is. You can remake the story. Yeah, which is fine. Hey,
it's
not much of a story.
I don't have any of the Italian guys, Fulci or Argento, on my top 10 list, and I probably wouldn't. I love those films, but I think it's there'll never be another time period like that. Because even if you're in Italy now trying to make a film like that,
it wouldn't come out like that.
Budgetarily, there's going to be, CG or whatever the case is. But I don't know. I think there was always a slight, I love them and respect them, and I don't want to get hate here, but it's like, I have a tough time putting them up against like some of the other movies on our list because of the language gap and the dubbing and maybe them not making all that much of a lot of sense.
No, it makes sense.
I think they're flawed movies. They're beautiful movies, but they're all very flawed.
Oh, yeah.
But I think that's the great thing about that. That's the power of cinema. Yeah. Is that I can forget. If I watch any of these again right now, I'll be like, oh, God, that scene. Yeah. The scene with Barbara Magnolfi, with, the acting and the dubbing. And you're like, oh.
But that's part of
it's the dreamy element of cinema. It's that the couple images that get stuck in your head, the colors. It's actually surprisingly for me with Suspiria, I actually think it's the first 2 minutes. I think it's her in this airport that is not real. Like it's an airport, but then there's this weird green light coming from, and then she goes outside in the rain.
It's diegetic, but non-diegetic at the same time because it's responding to what's happening on screen.
Yeah. And then I actually showed the opening recently to some students because she then gets in a taxi and it has the purple and green green light on her face. But then inside the cab, which looks amazing. But then it cuts to a wide shot of the cab driving, and the streets are completely normally lit. So there's no motivation for that lighting at all. Like here I was expecting, there'll be a cool purple light. Nope. Just normal street. And so he's just saying, I don't care. This is he's literally saying, this is dream. This is and I don't know. It's one of those, I just am so happy that movies existed at some point for us that were different.
Yeah.
And, I feel like this year, the only one I can say that is Under Her Skin is going to go down 20 years from now, and it's still going to be unique. Whether you like it or not, it's going to be singular. Like, there's nothing in that will date that movie.
Yeah,
it's just true. Like, this is a crazy movie.
Yeah.
How did it get made? With Scarlett Johansson? How?
Yeah.
And now it's in Redbox. I laughed. I went to a Redbox this weekend, and there was Under Her Skin and Enemy, and I'm like, you will not find two more abstract movies on Earth, and yet they're in a Redbox. There's going to be some angry customers.
Yeah.
But it's cool. I'm glad.
Nice.
Anyway, so that was number 5.
Bekah 5.
I'm lumping these two films together as one continuous thing. Rec 1 and 2.
Nice inclusion. And it answers a question I'm going to ask later, which was going to be like post-2000 movies that might eventually get in your thing, but very cool.
Rec 1 and 2. They are, for the longest stretch, I could not find movies that actually scared me. Rec 1 and 2 startled me.
Yeah, really, really good movie. Yeah. And I have never seen them back to back, but I bet it flows seamlessly.
Perfectly,
I watched them back to back. I'd never seen part 2, or I'd never seen part 1. And then when Rec 2 came out, I remember I got a screener of Rec 2 early, and I was like, well, I should watch. And I was reviewing it for Fangoria, and I was like, well, I should watch the first one first. So I watched them continuously, and it was just freaky. It was very, very freaky.
Have either of the creators of those films made an American film yet?
Actually, I think they did something, but
that sounds
hold on.
I mean, because
I will look it up.
It's weird because they do a Rec movie together and then they go and do separate stuff.
I've known they've done separate things.
I don't know about
Rec 3 is still the
American.
same people?
Oh, well, one of them did a movie called New Daughter with Kevin Costner.
Oh, I heard of that film. I never saw it.
Yeah,
I did not enjoy Rec 3 as much. It shifted the paradigm.
Yeah.
I mean, it suddenly.
I love it though.
I mean, she put down the camera. It's fun. It's kind of batshit, but it's more like a holy shit bride with chainsaw.
Right.
Whereas the first two scared me. The third one just amused me.
Yeah. Well, now we're at part 3.
Yeah.
4 is coming out, and if you check out the trailer
will it be found
online,
footage or not?
I think it is, and it ties back to 1 and 2 because the main girl is the lead of it again. Okay. Angela, whatever her name was.
Oh,
Angela Vidal.
But that's something I will be excited to see.
Yeah,
that's one of those films that's like,
for.
cool. But no, 3 was a lot of fun, but it definitely, to me, didn't have it wasn't quite in the same feeling, but that's because it broke that thing, and maybe it should have broken it straight away, like the start of the movie, first minute, and I would have been totally cool then going into a.
Well, I like that because it's like you're like, oh god, we have to do another.
I know that's true.
One of these, and then like when they're like, stop filming it, and it's like, oh, awesome. Okay,
this is why I thought they'd done something. They did one of the 6 films to keep you awake. Which is. They did. Well, I can read it in Spanish right here, right now.
It's the one with the crazy Santa lady.
It's called Peculiar. I'm translating it very poorly right now. Peculiar Paranormal, something about Navidad, which would be Christmas.
It's a Christmas Tale. Xmas Tale is the one that they did. And Sleep Tight, which I haven't watched yet, is one of the other ones.
Sleep Tight. Sleep Tight's great. I liked that one a lot.
It's a little more Hitchcock thriller type, but it's good. It's a cool film.
Yeah. Where were we up to? 5?
That was 5.
That was 5.
Number 5 for me is Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors.
Nice.
And here's why I went for 3. 3 is my favorite of the sequels. And I won't argue with you about 1 being the definitive one, but to me, what I like about 3 is it's a good, again, just like Evil Dead 2, I think Nightmare 3 is a good representation of the series as a whole. I love the opening. I love the way that they introduce Freddy again. Like, you don't even see him right away. He's just running down the halls and you see his shadow coming after Patricia Arquette. And then she gets stuck in that, weird dream thing that we've all had where you're running in slow motion all of a sudden and he's right behind her. And it's got some of the most innovative stuff. I just think it's like kind of the pinnacle of, if you've never seen one before, you could start right with 3 and they'll bring you up to speed on who Freddy is, what the story is. Nancy comes back and explains what happened in 1, and then it adds to mythology. And you know what? And then it closes it out beautifully. Like, there is no need to make any more sequels after that because I liked the closure to the 3rd movie. So on its own, I think it's kind of a cool...
Chuck Russell,
yeah. Directed by Chuck Russell. Frank Darabont wrote, co-writer. So, that's the Nightmare I'm going with as number 5.
Great movie.
Nice.
4.
4, and well, now we're getting to the bones.
Let's get to it.
Man, I don't know. This is like, this could also 4 and my number 1. It's been my number 1 before. It's The Thing. I just think I think Carpenter could have many, during that little stretch, and The Fog has dramatically risen since the Blu-ray release for me. I've got to say, but I think The Thing is just one of the top 3 horror films of all time. I think it's just so interesting. I think it's so claustrophobic. I think the practical effects were truly like, I just remember jumping when the doctor puts his hands inside and they get, the kind of teeth come out.
Yeah.
I just think it's, it's part, a little bit science fiction, a lot horror. I think it's Carpenter's best film. And it'll always have a place in my list. Great movie and great beard.
Great beard.
Well done. But it can go in between. Once I get to 5 and up, they can all, play around a little.
Number 4?
Number 4, Aliens.
Aliens.
The second one. Okay. I enjoy the first one a lot, but
action film.
I know. No, it's a horror film too.
I mean, in our show, it's an horror. I do think of the first. Yeah, the first one strikes me as like the haunted house. It's the boogie boog, and then the second one is like the action movie version of that same story.
I
but
always liked the
scary.
second one better for some reason. I think it was just there was more aliens in the second one, and I wanted more creatures and
more Bill Paxton.
Yeah, more Bill Paxton. So more Michael Biehn.
Oh yeah, or Bane.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I always like the second one.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even. It's these lists are so funny because like I didn't even put Alien in that world, even though it is.
Yeah.
And yet, if you, I mean, it really is just. It's like a perfect movie.
Yeah.
It's just like Jaws. I mean, Alien and Jaws. I left off this list, but only because I think they transcended being on a horror list.
Yeah.
Because they become just like best movies.
Yeah. Like of course you love Jaws. Everyone loves Jaws. You don't find somebody who's like, I fucking hate that movie. It's so flawed.
Though you will find some people who love them more than, like, that's my favorite film of all time. Those people. So that's interesting.
Yeah, because I mean, like, even The Exorcist, I say it's not scary. But it's a great movie, and I totally get why it's everyone's favorite. So,
the number 4 for me is Trick or Treat.
Nice.
Wow. Yeah. Our first anthology that made the list.
I love, now it has fallen into that time period where I usually kick off October watching it. And
July.
July. Yeah, it's here in LA. You start that early. I think it's a modern masterpiece. I love everything about it. I love the tone. I think it captures everything I love about Halloween perfectly. And it's fun. It's something you can show to anybody and that gets it right away. So Trick or Treat's number 4 for me.
Speaking of Halloween, I've been getting leaks from the publicist about what the mazes at Universal are going to be this year. I don't think I can say on air yet, but I'm kind of psyched.
Leaks.
So I will see you guys.
I'm still crossing my fingers for the Fulci maze. I'm crossing a long time. Wouldn't that be cool if they just went, we're going to go all crazy and
I want a David Lynch
Argento
maze.
lighting would be amazing in there. Cool. That's a cool one. I haven't seen Trick or Treat since when I first saw it, and I loved it. And I'm excited to see it again. I wish I'd gone when Beyond Fest was on.
Yeah,
it was see it on screen.
That was because they did like the whole hallway that was all decked out, like as if you were in the movie.
I will kick off this Halloween with it.
Well, we've already decided that Marnie is going as Sam Hain this year, and we saved the lollipop from last year so she can carry it around. Because she's right at the good height for it.
I'll go with her, and I'll be Dylan Baker.
Okay.
Who doesn't want to be? But I'll be Happiness Dylan Baker because that's way less creepy.
Yeah. Top 3. This is going to be tough.
It's not length, Billy. It's width. For Happiness fans, you will be disgusted by that comment. Anyway, probably the most disturbing line I've ever seen in a movie. Okay, number 3 on my list is also the thing that I think is number 1 horror film of all time. So it's my number 3 just as personal. Next week it might go up.
Wow.
Because it's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I think in terms of what a horror film even is, like what do we talk about horror and all the different branches of horror, but in terms of something that just comes out of nowhere and shakes you up and shakes everything up, that touches it. I feel like that is the perfect horror movie because it's an independent. So when we get to talking about what are the best, if I'm saying Exorcist and that, I'm always going to pick Texas because it was independently made. It came out of nowhere by somebody who was no one. And that fascinates me because it is down to the film stock, down to the way it's shot, down to where it's shot, the heat, and then this thing just opens the door, hits someone in the head, and then disappears. Now, again, because we've all seen remakes and reboots, it definitely could lose some of its power. It doesn't. That film somehow, you go back and you watch it and you go, nope, hasn't lost anything. The only problem I have is, what's his name in the wheelchair?
Franklin.
Oh my God.
Kind of
Franklin's my least favorite character in the history of cinema.
I've always hated watching Franklin. I want her to push him over from the beginning because he doesn't shut up.
Oh yeah, he's really, it kills me. But no, there's something about and when it gets really, but from the moment she's at the dinner table, and then having to like the manic style shooting, and that it's so, I find that so disturbing.
Yeah.
And when the close up of her eye and then her jumping out the window, I just think that's as close as we've ever gone to like what this idea of what horror films are. I feel like every idea of what you can get across is in that movie somewhere, and I can't wait to see what it looks like. Restored
restoration.
And I will, if all goes well, I'll be able to report back next week because next Monday I will see William Friedkin interviewing Tobe Hooper about it, and
which is
can't wait to hear that.
Well, the reason, we'll see because I hear Tobe doesn't give great answers, but the reason it could be interesting because I knew nothing about this until looking it up. I did not know that Friedkin was basically Hooper's mentor when Hooper got to Hollywood. So what happened is Hooper was this guy from Texas, moved to Hollywood, and all I know is that Friedkin loved. He was blown away by Texas Chainsaw Massacre, so he kind of took him under his belt and said, I'll show you around Hollywood. So there's actually, because when I saw that this event was happening, I was like, oh, what? Like, I can't think of two more different guys. Like, Friedkin's like, super intellectual and super like on, and Toby's obviously super laid back. And so, but apparently there's an actual history there. So I'm very curious. It'll either be amazing or it'll be a disappointing talk. It's not going to be somewhere in the middle, right? It's going to be one of those. And last time I saw Friedkin talk, it was one of the best things I've ever seen. So I'm hoping he's the reason it goes. And then they were going to play the movie. So
that's funny knowing his Chainsaw history because I remember Jeff Burr, the director of Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, once told me a story that when they were mixing that movie and trying to get the cuts down or whatever, like they were reporting in Variety like every other day, like, Chainsaw still has an X. And in the room over for him was William Friedkin editing his new movie.
Oh, what was it at the time?
I don't know what it was. It was about 1989. Yeah, it was Guardian. That was it.
Oh, I love Guardian.
He was in The Guardian, and Jeff Burr would bump into him and talk to him, and he's like, Jeff, man, what the hell is in this movie? What's going on here?
Sounds like cruising. But yeah. So anyway, I can't, and we'll talk about what we think the best 10 are, and it could change, and a lot of films are important for other reasons. I also think, and this thing gets talked about in every history of horror book ever, but that fact that he made something that was like what they were seeing on the news from Vietnam, but he brought it like, boom, here it is in your backyard. And yet then you go back like Halloween and there's not actually, it's all imagined. And I think back to that film, I always think it's really gory.
Yeah.
Every time I think about it, I go, oh man, it's so bloody. And I actually think part of this is actually why I think, unlike Halloween, where it's all about being clever and using off screen, I actually think with Texas, it's because very early in the film, the hitchhiker does show some blood, but in a minor way where he's like cutting his. I feel like that scene somehow penetrates our fear of what we're seeing, and
it sets
everything is like a domino.
It's going to be worse, yeah.
But it's a great damn movie.
Okay,
nice.
Bekah, 3.
3, Hellraiser.
Cool. Glad it got so high.
Yeah, well, I mean, my leg's covered in it, so I kind of have to.
I almost thought that would have been your one because of.
I debated it, but it isn't. I love Hellraiser. Hellraiser was definitely one of the films that pushed me into horror from a really, really, really young age, and I just love that. I've never seen anything like Hellraiser before or after it. It is its own beast, and I love the mythos behind it. I love the comics. I read every single one of those comics that came out about it.
And you're really, you're pretty fully into the S&M scene.
I totally am. Got clamps on and everything. So,
and you're a big fan of 3, which I need to probably revisit because you like 3 so much. I mean, I remember thinking the CD guy was I had a problem with the Cenobite with CDs running through his head.
I thought he was awesome looking.
Yeah, he's awesome. No, one of our guys, our listeners even said something to me on Twitter like, I respected you fully until I found out you like 3 over 2. I was like, you know what? I love 3. 3 is like my fun one. It's like my icing. But I love 2. I mean, I have a Leviathan tattoo on my leg because Leviathan's my favorite character.
I like, what I like about this show is that that all of us, there'll be somebody out there who'll be listening to us who will love us for some reason, like, oh yeah, you represented my favorite movie. And then that same person will be listening one day and they'll go, oh, how could you?
Yeah, exactly.
Like you have the worst taste. And I think that's
because
because we're all, we have crazy, weird tastes. Like,
isn't Hellraiser 3 the one where, because he's Hellraiser, Pinhead's in that weird, totem thing?
It's called a obelisk.
And he's an obelisk, and then like he like totally like hooks some girl, and doesn't the guy say like Jesus or God, and he's like, not quite.
Yes.
I like that line. It's good for that.
I like that one just because it was more accessible to me for some reason. I mean, 1 and 2, it's definitely rooted in a house. It's all about, these very overwrought, dramatic characters. But 3, I loved because it was the first time that we picked up the box. We took it away from this family. We moved it someplace else. And it's in this really hip club with these really unlikable characters.
Yeah.
And
but then for me, that's becoming kind of like all the movies of that time period. Like,
well, that was the goal.
Yeah, exactly. It's trying to be mainstream. Yeah.
But that's why I liked the comic books so much. And maybe that's why I like 3 so much is that the reason that I loved the comic books and that I loved a lot of the other stuff Barker wrote about with the lament configuration is that it wasn't always the same Julia and Frank story. Right. They would pick it up and they would say, okay, well, here's how the box worked with a clown in the 20s. And here's what happened when a businessman found it in the 60s.
Yeah.
And I loved that it would like transcend space and time and created its own mythos in that. And
an anthology would have been cool.
Yeah.
Like a big budget anthology Hellraiser would have been cool.
I still want to do this. I would love if anyone from Barker's camp is listening. I want to take some of those old comics and I want to make them into an anthology film because some of my favorite stories are in there. Just amazing stuff about a guy crawling through the trenches of Vietnam, but he doesn't realize it, but it's actually a lament configuration.
Cool.
He's crawled the design.
Right.
And
cool.
Yeah, great.
There's just so many things like that.
Do we know where the rights are now? Like, are they still developing?
Weinstein still have it.
They're still developing.
That's why they made that direct-to-video one is to hold on to it.
And there were so many there that were not even necessarily about the box, but they were about the Cenobites. Like one of the Cenobites was a clown who was forced to amuse the unbaptized kids in hell. And just really cool little stories like that. So
he had a huge imagination.
It's rich for mythology and kind of exploring that.
And number
stuff.
2 was amazing because it opened up a whole in an asylum. Opens up like hell. I mean, it's remarkable.
Bloodline was the one that tried to be sort of an anthology. It didn't succeed.
But that was like my jump the shark moment.
But they went through time and space, and that's sort of like that's sort of in that direction.
Yeah.
But,
and Lance went on the internet. That was a rough one.
Number 3, Let the Right One In, original Swedish version.
Again, answering my future question.
It's just
I knew it was going to be there for you.
It's still one of my favorite movies. I mean, you know what? I can't remember why I had to put it on recently. I think I needed to revisit a scene for something that I was writing or whatever. And I just got so mesmerized. It's just such a gorgeous movie.
It's probably the best post-2000 film.
Yeah. It's just
in terms of classic. It has classic, just some feel of
everything. Yeah, as soon as you put it on, there's something just so beautiful about it. The way that it's shot, the sparseness of the noise. Like the scene I watched was actually very quiet, which, when you're out in snow, it like absorbs the sound, and there's just something about that feeling. And then when the score does come in, it's just, it's understated and beautiful. But I love the movie. So that's my number 3.
Top film.
2.
Good stuff. 2. Bum. Well, this is going to give away my top 2 because if I put this one at 2, this film has never been my not number 1 my whole life. And yet I'm going to put it at 2 because I'm on this show, which means you'll know my 1. My number 2 is The Shining.
I know what number 1 is.
I know number 1.
Which is, The Shining is, there's a documentary. You don't need me to talk about it. But I will say, personally, it was one of the first films in general that hypnotized me about movies. Like I was very young, saw it on TV, told all my friends, no one liked it. I was like, but there's something happening. I don't know what it is. And I still don't. The idea that I could study this much film and teach film and do all this stuff and still not know why a movie is working on me, I don't know. And that's what I liked about Room 237 is as absurd as a lot of it is. It's like people like me going, wait, it has to mean this. I don't have a theory, but I do. It's, it's continually hypnotized me. And yet I don't know if I'd put it in, like it will be obviously in the top 10 of all time horror films, of course, but I think it's very personal. It's like my appreciation of it's very much like, I don't know why it affects me, but I just think it's an incredible movie.
Yeah.
And I probably always will.
Okay.
That's number 2.
2.
Videodrome.
Cool. Oh, it got up there high.
Yeah.
Dr. Oblivion is
it was my first film to make me question what you could do with film. because it was the first one that I saw that I genuinely had no fucking clue what was going on in, but I really wanted to know.
You're going to have to have a stern talking to Clark Wolf, who I was tweeting back and forth. She was saying that Cronenberg had, on Twitter, she was going, it's just a bunch of white people worrying about a bunch of white men worrying about white men problems. And I was like, wait a minute. There's also, them worrying about what the woman will do to them and what Blondie's going to do.
Well, it's also for me, I mean, now I can look at it more broadly, but for me, it's the advent of a new media and it infiltrating our homes.
Cronenberg's literally always 20 years ahead.
I know he is.
He's always way too far ahead. It's crazy.
And I mean, it's kind of like it's foreseeing the internet before the internet even got here, because it's all about, it's in your house now. Oh, yeah. You can get any information there here. And it's
reality
all about
TV. Those two things combined. It's literally both of them.
And the phrase that always got to me from it, that especially now whenever I teach it, I think about is I've always hyper aware or hyper... it's when Deborah Harry is talking about how hyperstimulated, and she's saying that she's always hyperstimulated, and that's why she likes to work in video and things like that. And then
we all are now.
I'm suddenly like, we're all hyperstimulated now. Yeah. And so but this was the first one. I saw Videodrome when I was in high school. And prior to this, every film I had seen was like a linear film that I could make sense, even if I didn't really know exactly what was going on, like in some of like the Fulci ones or, some of the weird Italian trippy stuff.
It wasn't because the ideas were above our heads.
It was just poor filmmaking.
It was just because they're weird or whatever. Yeah. But Videodrome's actually about ideas.
This is the first one where I was like, so the gun's in his belly, but his belly's a mouth.
The video cassette is going into his vaginal stomach.
I don't have a clue what's going on.
But it's one of those films. I have not seen it lately, and I have the Criterion DVD, but now I'm like, well, now I need to watch a Blu-ray if I'm going to revisit this movie. So I probably will, because I think out of Cronenberg's films, that probably would have been the one on my list too, but I'd need to rewatch it again. But yeah, the reality TV stuff, I tweeted a quote, I think 2 nights ago, and didn't say it was from that. I said Dr. Oblivion, because it was one of the guys who's on the TV, and he's talking about, reality TV is more real than, television's more real than reality or
Dr.
something.
Brian Oblivion.
Yeah, and you're just like, man.
And he doesn't even exist in it.
Right, and it's become such a, those lines are just gone. They're traceable. Go watch Catfish, people. Where does it begin and where does it end? Good stuff.
Number 2, Psycho.
Nice.
You liking Psycho?
Kind of self-explanatory.
I want to know which number 1 is now.
Well, it's pretty obvious. 2 and 1 I've always mentioned.
What's your second favorite Psycho? Is it 2 or 3?
God, that's such a difficult.
Or 4.
I like them all for my own different reasons. I tend to, if I had to, I would normally say 2, because I just think 2 is just such a strong movie, and I love Meg Tilly.
Great movie.
But there's something about 3. 3 is like...
It's the most Hitchcockian.
3 is the weirdo version of Psycho for teenage Rob G. That's how I feel about it. It's like the sleazier 80s version of the original movie.
That's the Perkins directed one.
Yes.
And it feels like he's just totally aping Hitchcock. Every shot looked like... And that's what's so fun about it.
It is.
Like, I love 3. And not because it has a nun. I just think it's a fun film.
Oh, I forgot about the nun.
Yeah, the nun. Yeah, no, I like all... I still don't know if I've even seen 4, but I love the...
You'll have to watch it, because we and I'll talk more about Psycho later, because obviously I've talked enough about it in my personal life.
I've never seen the black and white Psycho, but the love that's on.
Oh my God.
And it's just so good.
But yeah, we'll have a Psycho episode for my birthday next year.
Yeah, God, we'll have to figure out what we talk about on that.
4's really good. I'll talk
watch
about
4 for that. That'll be my reason to watch it.
I really enjoy 4.
Wasn't there a TV show with Bud Court?
Yeah, it's awful. I have that too if you really want to see it, but I can't even make it through it.
I love Bud Court.
So bad.
Okay.
All right, we're down to number 1. Spit it out.
My favorite movie is...
Ready for your shot. Take a shot.
The First Chud, because I've already talked about this. No, it felt only fitting, given how much I've... And given the timing of it's back out. And I'll justify it quickly. Possession is my number 1. And I have to think that this is the reason. I was thinking about it. It's like the idea that what movies can do, kind of like how I felt about The Beyond, but that a movie could shake you up, confuse you, slap you in the face, make you sad, make you enthralled, hypnotize you. That all movies across the board can have moments like this, and that there's a movie that I've seen that did all of that in one movie. And I can't think of any movie I've seen in the rest of my life that had all of those things operating on me. What did I see? But also knowing that something really powerful happening. And I've been as much as I talk about it, I have really not seen it that many times. very much on purpose. I've seen it once on VHS, which was the first time that it had the big, profound effect on me. Then I owned it and never watched it on DVD, and then went with the screening where I kind of got to know Bekah better, which was hugely powerful because now it's on screen. It was. I was so worried it wasn't going to have the power. I remember going into it going, oh, all these other people haven't seen it, are about to experience this thing I took very personally. And it was really weird to me because I was thinking, man, maybe it won't be as good. Maybe it'll be kind of cheesy when the monster stuff happens. And it was even better. And so now I have the Blu-ray and don't know if I can even watch it. I'll probably watch bits of it. And
a sign that it worked, Matt did not say one thing through the whole film.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Matt, if you're listening, who ruined The New Maniac for us by talking through the entire thing. But no, it's true, and it just has an unholy power. And I think we're very lucky to right now be in a time where your average horror fan can now pick up a pristine version of this film, and with its reputation now intact, and like 35-40 minutes back that was missing largely from the American. So, it's a very different from how I discovered it. And the Blu-ray, from the parts I checked, looked amazing. And I probably will sit down and watch it again soon. But it's not for, especially if you're in bad relationships or married, there's a lot of reasons why it's not saying you can just watch any time, because the intensity is pitched so high. But I got to tell you, there's no other movie I've seen that had that much going on. It just fucked me up. That literally the only time I could really say that. There's a movie that fucked me up, and I think it has that effect on a lot of people who see it.
Did you like that Esquire article that I forwarded you?
Yeah, it was cool. Yeah.
Somebody read an article saying, "Forget Deliver Us from Evil, just watch Possession."
Yeah, and it changed. Little parts change a lot. I will be interested psychologically now that the color has been changed. That's the thing I probably do need to rewatch it for, to see if it feels the same, because the blue tint that was always there is now gone, because it wasn't meant to be there.
Well, I'm glad of that, because the original VHS that I had, I could never see the creature.
So
I had never seen the creature until we watched the 35 millimeter print, and then I was suddenly like, whoa, he's got tentacles.
Wait till you watch the extra features on this new Blu-ray. There's some things in there that I've read a lot. Anything I could get my hands on over the years, I've read. Any interview with Zalewski, anything I could ever find, and it wasn't easy, because often it was just that guy in England, Daniel Bird, who did that Eyeball magazine. And they talk about the monster and Carlo Rambaldi, who had just done E.T. and everything, and that they were in LA and they came to America to try to get him to do the designs. And he came out thinking, so he assumed he had something like 60 days to like just be in Italy and just create. Oh, it'll probably take me 60 days. And they're like, no. We got like, a week. We gotta do this week.
Didn't he?
And he came over with this giant crate, and it was nothing. It was basically like Zalewski opens it. So here I am all these years going, hey, Zalewski created this giant penis thing. He was horrified when the box opened, and it was just basically like a giant penis looking thing, and he just looked at the guy and was like, what the hell is, like, I can't put that in a movie. So it wasn't like even part of his design. But he found a way. Once Rambaldi got there and realized like they're in the thick of it, he said he changed from this kind of spoiled, I've worked with Spielberg and everything, and they went back to his how do you say, Quinquetta Sensetta, whatever, the Italian studio. He went back to his days like having to knock something out overnight, and did the changes that were needed to it, and just knocked it out of the park. And so when you see it, you'll see. But there's some pretty interesting stories, and that it was also meant to be an American film at one point, and kind of like it was being written in New York, and it was going to be with a studio, and would have been a very different film, and then things changed. And but anyway, that film's very dear to my heart. If you haven't seen it, it's an exciting time. Go get that Blu-ray or a version of it, or borrow one and watch it.
Well, then there's a rumor that I'm glad is not true. I heard that that the possession monster, he had just taken the creature from Cameron's closet and made it humpable.
No, and I don't think Rambaldi would have done. Rambaldi was like real deal artist. There's various. Without spoilers, there's various incarnations of the monster. But there's one shot in particular that's just incredibly phallic, and you're like, whoa! And it works in the context of the movie. But I love the idea that the director didn't plan that. Some guy just shows up, and apparently this crate had to go through all the
penis monster.
Yeah, it came from America, so it had to go through all everyone who would open the crate at customs would just see this giant penis, like bigger than a human. So anyway, good fun. Great movie.
Yes.
Number one.
Number one for me, Suspiria.
Cool.
And again, I definitely agree with you that the movie.
Oh my God, I'm going to end up respecting you at the end of this.
Oh, shut up! You will not.
I will. Hellraiser and Suspiria at the top of your list. I can't.
I knew there was a reason that we'd work together.
I guess
so
it's
much,
the important stuff, the core stuff.
But Suspiria for me, and I mean, I agree completely that it's definitely got these weird flaws to it that I can't subscribe fully to the plot, and I like the witch element, but there's weirdness to it, and I really like the soundtrack, but there are times that it's a little bit abrasive. But what this film did for me is it's the first film I saw that made me say, I want to make that.
That's cool.
So it was the film that made me want to, because prior to that, I was perfectly content being in the audience. I was not a kid who was like, I want to make movies all the time. I wasn't like 10 out doing that or anything. But when I saw Suspiria in my senior year of high school, it was the first time that I was like, you know what? I want to do that because that looked really cool. So yeah, it was my jump.
Yeah, those are the important ones.
Yeah.
Huge.
And in the same regard, my number one is Evil Dead 2.
Wait, we flipped our list.
Surprise! We've come full circle.
I knew yours would be. I knew that would be number one.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it a million times. It's my favorite horror movie of all time, and because I saw it at an impressionable age. I think it's fun. It's hilarious. It's got the scares. It's got everything. And just like Bekah said, it's like the first time that I became. I could comprehend camera tricks and that these guys were making a movie. Like I could tell the innovative way of them telling the story and figuring things out. Like, oh, the smoke coming out of the trees, that's just a shot in reverse. So that's how they did that. And, and I just loved it. So that's my favorite horror movie. What were some of for me, some of the hard things besides, I talked about Lynch, Cronenberg, leaving them out. Larry Cohen was really tough because I love so many of his films and yet I love the first 2/3 of the stuff is like one of my favorite movies. And then the last third, I'm like, yeah, it's all right. And, I love It's Alive, but there's certain filmmakers, Poltergeist actually is something that every year I start to like it even more. And as a kid, it's actually definitely one of the ones that scared me the most. The clown is still probably the scariest thing as a kid that I ever watched. But the movie's never worked for me. I really like it. It was on TV this weekend. I was like, this is so fun. I like Poltergeist 3 because I saw that as had all the weird camera tricks as well. But something about that film. Well, and I think it's unless we ever get the truth behind it, I think it's the Spielberg touches that probably make it so kind of magical. But yeah, it was on this weekend. I just watched a couple minutes and I was seeing something I forgot about, which is Craig T. Nelson and his wife like smoking a joint in their room. And you're like, man, I think what it is I think they might be the best characters in a horror film in terms of like when we talk about caring, I care about that family. That's they seem like a really nice, and that's where the only difference between that and Insidious, because I really, in terms of contemporary films, I think Insidious is fantastic, but I don't necessarily, it feels like Hollywood actors in roles, even though they do a good job. Whereas this feels like a family. They're just good parents. Yeah. And this one, they're good parents with lives. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. With something behind the facade. You mean Elric, you're just not always a wonderful parent. Yeah. So let's rattle off our runner-ups. This is impossible. I mean, again, because mine is there's glaring omissions in mine, but they're just my personal faves. I acknowledge that some of the best. I don't have any John Carpenter, and he's my favorite horror director. Yeah, but I acknowledge that Halloween's one of the best movies ever made, the original. You said Exorcist, you said Texas Chainsaw. Do you have a favorite Carpenter? Like just the one that you would like rewatch the most? Not including Halloween? Yeah, what do you rewatch the most? Is it Halloween? Halloween's my favorite. It'd be kind of a tie between They Live and The Fog. Yeah. Those two I remember being very impressionable. I think They Live was just, but then you said that, now I'm forgetting The Thing, and The Thing is kind of up there on top, Carpenter had there's no one who can touch him in terms of that little period. It's impossible to I think it's did we get it down to like 6 films in a row where it's just like, there's no one who can touch that kind of run. And at the same time, it's like none of us mentioned, we all acknowledge the importance of Night of the Living Dead, the original, as a classic film. Black Christmas. That's one of my favorite horror movies. I thought that was going to be on yours for sure when we were coming in. And it's on my top 10 best made, but it's not on my personal. That wouldn't be in the classic for me. I mean, I think that's definitely more in the personal for me. If we're let's unless you had a runner up, you had to mention. I have Wicker Man. Yeah, great movie. This one you're going to laugh at. Leviathan is a runner-up for me. It's fun. I love my aquatic horrors. Bucket of Blood is a runner-up for me just because I always loved the entrance of art into horror. Wolfen. Oh, weird. That's an odd one, too. Yeah, I know. I like wolves, and I like cities, so there you go. And Gregory Hines is a hell of a tap dancer. I got to rewatch that one because it has a weird POV shot
that's every time you see the wolf, you see the POV, and it's really strange, but it's a good movie.
Yeah.
Albert Finney.
Ms. 45, The Devils, Psychomania, and Return of the Living Dead. Those are my runner-ups.
Return is great.
Probably the closest on my personal list that probably would normally be there is Santa Sangre. That's a film that I've always just loved. I think it's the only good Psycho ripoff. It's just
Doing the bird.
But I love that film. I think that film again maybe transcends just being horror. It's like just this imaginative beast. But yeah, I am interested in talking about, just briefly, we don't have to, we've been doing this for a while, but just, what our traditional top 10, is there anything? I mean, obviously none of us had Exorcist in our personal top 10, and yet I still think it's in the top 2 horror films. The top 3 is Halloween, Texas Chainsaw, and then Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
Let me see. And I did write runner-up really quick. Day of the Dead, the original Romero one. I know you said Dawn, and I love Bubba Hotep. There's just something personally for me about that movie. But in terms of the traditional top 10, the one that doesn't get mentioned, I never hear it in the top 10, but that I think is aged beautifully, is the first Child's Play. Yeah. Like, it's a really solid.
Yeah, I remember it being a good movie.
And again, it's kind of like the Nightmare argument you made. Like, if that movie was just a one-off,
right,
it's pretty darn amazing as just a piece of straightforward horror entertainment. I love the original Child's Play. And of the last couple, last decade or whatever, I had a really tough time. I feel like The Conjuring is going to be one of those in 20 years.
Let's talk about that instead, because I guess I think just by doing our list, we've talked about what are the best films. Yeah, look, I was thinking about this. I think Bekah nailed it with Wreck.
Yeah, Wreck is definitely.
And you nailed it with Let the Right One In. Those are two that definitely 20 years from now, well, who knows?
I don't know, because they're both international.
But Let the Right One In is like a great fairy tale, and they don't age. And the way it's shot, it won't age. Wreck is, because it's found footage, maybe it'll age weirdly to us. For me personally, because I also had I really connected to it when I first saw it. I don't know how I'll feel seeing it. It was The Descent is still
The Descent.
my favorite
I
of the 2000s.
I forgot about that one.
And then House of the Devil is behind that, but that's quite a leap. I think House of the Devil's. Jocelyn's fascinating. So
I think
it's not
House
the same
of the
level.
Devil is a little too arty to reach a lot of audience.
and it's also, and it's not, no, Descent for me
Descent, I feel, has a shot in like 20 years as
because
being
it's also the
that.
reverse Deliverance, gender wise, and it's just fascinating. But there, there aren't a lot. Like, I don't think Scream will be. I mean, for some people maybe, but again, it got really. I mean, Scream without the sequels.
Scream, I think, was a product of the time because
totally.
it was this generation that had grown up with the slasher films, and we were all hardened of them, and we were ready for a kind of smart satire of them. Someone to point out everything that we already all knew. And so I think that it hit our generation at this particularly good time, kind of, right just after the slasher cycle, but close enough to it that we could all, giggle and laugh and say, yeah, we knew that, and then let's all do it again. I don't know if it would be as effective with
I think Cabin in the Woods will age much better. Because on its own, it's a creative, fun, scary movie that just happens to be also referencing everything. Yeah. So it's like its own universe where Scream will just, but I don't want to, it's so unfair for movies that they age in that sense, because at the time, in that perfect moment, it was like the most entertaining film ever. Yeah. It was like, and then just the next year, number 2 is not as good, then number 3 is not as good. And so it's
that
unfortunate.
Did it for me with Ring and Grudge. I mean, when those two came out very close together, I mean, those were like the perfect moment for me. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, these are like the scariest things ever.
And Ringo and Ring are both fantastic. And that's one of the best remakes. They're both scary in different ways.
Wow.
All I would say in closing is, after doing this, I wrote it down on my way here because I realized a really fun if we're going to do another one of these top 10s, because we've now done 2, I think we should count down our favorite top 10 sequels. And just personal one. Again, not the best. The ones those sequels you love. And
I did half of that in my.
Yeah, you did pretty good. You did good. But
I could, if it was just sequels, I could do a top 10 of that.
Yeah, I could too.
Yeah.
I think that'll be fun. But I think this is good. And I think this time, maybe a week or so after the show has been up, we should write these up and post them on somewhere so we can so you guys can check them out. And don't forget, we have this Tumblr. Jennifer Lovely has done incredible work. We are like 67 episodes in, and we are up to date. She just sent me the latest one. We are good.
Every
and I'm posting
movie
on
we've ever
Tumblr,
mentioned
which is so those people
there.
who are listening, if you're just started listening, or if you're not on Facebook or Twitter, just know that we have listed every title ever mentioned in every single episode, whatever it is, even if it was casually, or even if we were making fun of something and it wasn't to do with the horror conversation. She's noted it. It is just search Killer POV and the word Tumblr, and you'll find it.
We should start throwing out like a batshit title each issue, each one, just so people are like, really, like Troop Beverly Hills. There you go.
I think she only had to email me maybe once asking me like that I yawned or something as I said it, and she couldn't figure it out. But usually she'll like,
I don't know.
I mean, I'll tell you which episode would have been really tough is the Bleeding Skull one.
Yeah.
Because they won't be movies she'd heard. Like there'll be these obscure things. She probably had to search everything.
I just want people on the Tumblr. I don't want to stump her because she's awesome. Yeah, I just want people on the Tumblr later to be like, why the fuck did they talk about hot dogs?
No, there's a couple. If you look through, there's a couple. Like I was like, what were we?
When did we mention
it's like a kids film or something? But anyway, so
thank you, Jennifer, for that.
Yeah, which is huge. And you guys being part of this conversation is what keeps this interesting. If we didn't know you were listening, this would get old fast because we are all friends in real life and hear each other talk. So keep it up.
These guys never shut up.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, just blah blah.
We need more comments on iTunes. We need more comments on Facebook. Right now, we're finishing up something on Facebook that might be fun for you to check out, and it's something to do with our last episode. Go check it out.
Yeah,
and we will be back next week.
Yes. Next week is episode 69.
69,
dude.
Whoa! I wonder if we'll have some sort of sexist theme.
Snicker, kids.
Snicker. Cool.
Yeah,
we will
join
see
us
you
then
next week.